To protect her family, Lien decided to stop hiding. This was also the first time she revealed her true strength. She needed to regain her footing in the Bailey family. Previously, due to her status as an illegitimate daughter, she had been constantly scorned by the family. Her father passed away when she was 16, leaving her to face an even more miserable life. Alone and ostracized, she struggled to survive in this family. The difficulties seemed endless. She also learned that her aunt was the murderer who killed her father. Finally, killed in despair, she awoke back in her room, her deceased father sitting beside her, alive once more. Tears streaming down her face, she apologized profusely. She blamed herself for not staying by his side. She saw that even someone as strong as him would be affected by her. She gently reached out to comfort her father. "I'm all right now, father. Please don't cry." Bailey Ichang's face showed surprise. This was the first time Lien had called him father. Looking at her, he remembered her past life. As she grew older, their relationship had become increasingly distant. Yet, he was the only one in this world who loved her. Lien propped up her weak body and spoke the words she hadn't been able to say in her previous life. "Father, I love you." In the next second, Bailey Ichang tightly embraced her. It felt so good to have a second chance. She hoped that in this life, she would be accepted by everyone. The next day, Lien woke up in bed, staring blankly, completely oblivious to the servant girl's calls. Suddenly, the servant's voice rose several octaves, startling Lien out of her daze. The servant girl, with unconcealed disdain, slammed the door and left. Loud gossip could be heard from outside. "What a fool. I called her so many times, and she didn't even hear me." Inside the room, Lien heard everything. Looking at the simple room and the servant who looked down on her, she felt a sense of relief. "I'm really back. I thought it was a dream." She reached out to test her dantian, but it was still shattered. She had lost all her internal energy. Her thoughts drifted. In the Bailey family, her father was a once-in-a-century genius. Not only was he handsome, but he was also a skilled swordsman, and she was just the illegitimate daughter he brought back, causing her father to be the subject of family gossip. Yet, he never gave up on her. She secretly vowed that this time, she would change her father's fate. Early in the morning, she arrived outside the study but hesitated to enter. Lien, who had been fearful in her past life, didn't know how to communicate with her father. But in order to survive, she mustered her courage. Pushing open the door, she saw her father's handsome appearance. Her face flushed, and she ran towards him. She tripped over a scroll on the floor. Fortunately, her father was quick to catch her, preventing a close encounter with the ground. Looking at the scattered books and scrolls, Lien's eyes reddened again. Her father had been staying up late, researching how to cure her illness. Seeing her expression, her father became even more worried. Lien opened her arms towards him. Her father looked confused. Lien asked helplessly, "Aren't you going to hug me, father?" Only then did her father pick her up. His awkward hold revealed his inexperience, but Lien was still happy. She had never been hugged before. It felt warm and safe. After that, it was a cycle of medicine, sleep, medicine, sleep. It felt like she had taken every medicine imaginable. Today, she fell asleep during treatment. Waking up, she heard the doctor saying, "Third young master, why are you doing useless work?" Ignoring Lien's questions, the doctor stormed out. Lien went to the courtyard alone. It turned out her father didn't live here. It was only because of her that her grandfather had moved here. As she walked, she heard a commotion ahead. Lien peeked around the corner. People were discussing her grandfather's return. Her grandfather was the head of the Bailey family, but he was rarely home, either cultivating or traveling. Why would he suddenly return? Memories from her past life flooded back. It was the events of this day that led her grandfather to completely despise her and her father. Lien started to run desperately, wanting to stop her father before it happened. However, with her damaged dantian and weak body, she quickly became breathless after only a few steps. Finally reaching the main hall, she heard her grandfather's roar from inside. Both she and her father were startled. Despite this, the guards still refused to let anyone enter. Just as Lien was thinking of a way to sneak in, a displeased female voice came from behind her. It was a voice she would never forget, her aunt Bailey Ilan. Looking at her aunt, Lien felt apprehensive. She couldn't help but recall how it was in her past life. Every encounter with her aunt resulted in a scolding. She would greet her, only to be met with fault-finding. It wasn't until after her father's death that she realized the person her aunt hated most was actually her father. Her aunt was just as aggressive as she remembered from her past life. Lien quickly apologized and offered a greeting. Then the intense berating began. Everyone present watched with bated breath. The scene made it seem like her aunt was bullying her niece. Her aunt's expression became noticeably flustered. "You managed to walk here all by yourself? You don't seem that weak." Lien coughed and said, "But there's no one at my residence. Everyone seems busy. I had to come here alone." Lien clearly remembered that it was her aunt's own mother who managed the household affairs, and the shocking laziness and neglect within the residence were all tacitly permitted by her second uncle. Unnoticed, the shouting from the room stopped. A skilled martial artist like her grandfather must have heard the commotion outside. Her aunt, realizing this, flew into a rage and reached out to shove Lien. Just then, her grandfather's voice boomed, "All of you, get in here." Her aunt looked down disgruntled. A moment later, the two entered the room. Her grandfather sat in the hall, his back straight, his demeanor imposing. He felt as majestic as a mountain. Lien craned her neck, searching for her father. She found him kneeling on the floor. Lien hadn't expected the situation to have escalated to this point. Her grandfather's voice boomed again, angrily asking her aunt why she was there. The sound made Lien tremble. Her aunt suddenly put her hand on Lien's shoulder, prompting her to answer her grandfather. Lien knew her aunt was trying to divert attention to her. Unexpectedly, her grandfather dismissed her from the room the next second. Her eldest uncle tried to reason with her grandfather, but he didn't respond. Her aunt left with a sullen face. Lien was even more afraid to speak, fearing she would also be sent away. At that moment, a boy offered her a friendly greeting. It was her eldest uncle's son. Her eldest uncle, seemingly kind, beckoned her over. Lien ignored them and resolutely knelt down. This action surprised everyone. Even her grandfather's eyes widened slightly, because Lien knew that going to her eldest uncle's side in front of her grandfather would surely incur his wrath. Having lived through her past life, she knew her eldest uncle was only superficially kind. His true intentions were no different from her aunt's. A sudden, sharp pain in her head made her body involuntarily flinch. Her father, even more anxious and distressed, called out, only to receive an even harsher reprimand. Lien reached out and placed her hand on her father's, trying to calm him. Her grandfather spoke. "Do you know why your father is kneeling before me?" Lien lowered her head. "Because I heard that before I arrived. Father never disappointed you." Her grandfather, aware of his own health, instructed the servants to bring forth a tray. On it was the Huang Hunban, the medicine her father had desperately pleaded for to treat her illness. A show-off, likely her cousin, stood awkwardly to the side. Lien immediately refused it. "I know this is a life-saving medicine." The show-off looked embarrassed. "You actually know?" Lien gave him a dangerous look. "Its name alone tells me that." Her grandfather continued, his face serious. "Since you know its effects, you should understand that this medicine is incredibly precious. Do you think you're worthy of it? Yet your father insisted on using it to treat your illness." At this moment, Lien felt no fear. She looked up into her grandfather's eyes and replied, "I know, but I don't need it now." In her past life, she eventually took this medicine, but it only made her physically healthy. She still had to rely on her father's protection to survive. She continued to question her grandfather. "Can this medicine repair my dantian?" Everyone present was shocked. They hadn't considered this question. Lien continued, "Is my illness fatal? In my heart, as long as I can be with father, I'm happy." Her grandfather hadn't expected this little girl to be so filial. Her father gave Lien a smile and then looked resolutely at his father. As her father, as long as there's a sliver of hope, I won't give up. Lien felt deeply moved. She hadn't expected her father to still be so determined. She was prepared for her grandfather's scolding. Unexpectedly, they asked her in. Lien immediately gave her father a look urging him to leave. But just as she stood, she felt dizzy again. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Finally, amidst her father's cries, she lost consciousness. In her dream, she remembered the scene of meeting her father. Back then, frail and weak, she was fortunate to encounter him. Why was he on this unfamiliar street? She woke again in the evening. Lien gasped for breath. She was met with her father's anxious greetings. But from the doorway came her grandfather's stern voice. Lien then realized she was at her grandfather's residence. At that moment, her grandfather's loyal subordinate was about to enter. When did she become the subject of so much attention? Holding the medicine in her hand, she felt at a loss. Her father was still there, explaining that her grandfather had summoned the imperial physician. Lien was stunned. Although she had met the imperial physician in her past life, it wasn't at this time. Her grandfather also instructed her to stay and receive treatment for 3 days. Lien secretly rejoiced. It seemed that because of this incident, her father's relationship with her grandfather had improved. After her grandfather left, her father looked at her with a serious expression. "Why have you been hiding it?" Lien looked at her father, a little flustered. She was hiding so many things. She didn't know which one he was referring to. "I'm talking about them bullying you." Lien suddenly understood. Her father must have heard what was said outside. She quickly reassured her father that she was fine, but he was still worried. He feared that something like this would happen again when he wasn't around. But Lien knew clearly that no matter how much her father intervened, until her grandfather acknowledged her, people wouldn't truly accept her. But she didn't blame her grandfather. He cared too much for her father, which was why he was so concerned about her existence. These words resonated with both her father and her grandfather, who was eavesdropping outside. Unaware of her grandfather's presence, she vividly described her grandfather's inner thoughts and deeds. Her portrayal made the father beside her tremble. She believed that as long as she tried hard enough, she would eventually gain her grandfather's approval. Because having lived through her past life, Lien knew that at her father's funeral, only her grandfather was truly grieved. Everyone else was merely putting on a show. This alone proved her grandfather's genuine love for her father. She would definitely turn things around. Having returned to her residence from her grandfather's mansion, she was awakened by the pitter-patter of rain outside the window. She discovered that her maid hadn't even closed the window. The table was covered in water. Her current treatment was a stark contrast to that at her grandfather's mansion. Just as she was about to go back to sleep, she was awakened by the commotion outside. The maid was complaining about being beaten because of Lien, believing it was all Lien's fault that she was scolded and punished. She stomped over. Just when Lien thought she could finally sleep, the maid barged back in, completely disregarding her sleeping master. She immediately put her foot on the bed, showing Lien the injury on her foot and claiming it was all Lien's fault. Lien initially intended to ignore her, offering to pour her some water and send her on her way. However, the maid retorted that Lien was old enough to pour her own water and shouldn't bother others with such trivial matters. Lien looked at her disdainfully and was about to turn away when news arrived from Steward Gao. He was the manager of the Bailey family's finances. He brought many treasures, supposedly bought by her grandfather during his travels for her. Lien knew this was her grandfather's way of acknowledging her and reconciling with her father. Unexpectedly, her father refused them. Steward Gao chuckled darkly. "Really? Young master, look, these are all very precious items. They're very helpful for restoring vitality." As expected, her father couldn't resist the temptation and eventually accepted everything. Then, Steward Gao produced the king's ginseng, something her father had been requesting for a long time, saying he could use it freely. Lien thought her father would urge her to consume it immediately, but he said nothing. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside. It was that maid again. She had taken a liking to a jade pendant her grandfather had sent and wanted to keep it. In her past life, she had often taken the gifts her father had received and declared them hers, claiming Lien was unworthy. It was happening again. Then, the maid suddenly turned to Lien and asked if she could have it. After Lien refused, the maid insisted it was hers anyway. Lien turned and told her father everything that had just happened. After hearing this, his expression clearly changed. The maid's demeanor instantly shifted as well. He said it was because I was beaten that he wanted to offer these as compensation. But these were all gifts from grandfather. I don't know if they can be regifted. The maid quickly retorted, frightened. But you said he said it himself. Otherwise, a terrifying aura filled the air. Father stood in front of you, looking down. Is this how you speak to your master? The maid quickly knelt and begged for forgiveness. She saw killing intent in Father's eyes. This made her even more afraid to move. Father sighed after a long while. You, a maid, are so impudent. Kneel here until sunset today. Having said that, he picked me up and left angrily. After punishing the maid, he brought me back to my room and paced back and forth. He muttered about her usual attitude, then covered his face and said, "Forget it." Then he told me not to be upset about it. It was their fault they were punished. It had nothing to do with me. He promised it wouldn't happen again. It was the first time I saw Father so conflicted and upset. He must have felt that he had neglected my situation lately. Seeing how much he cared, I believed I would have a happy life from now on. Then Father's subordinate came to ask where to put grandfather's gifts. Father initially instructed him to put the medicine in his room and the rest in mine. The next second, he changed his mind. He held my hand, as if making a significant decision. But after 15 minutes, he still hadn't said anything. I looked at Father anxiously, trying to guess what he wanted to say. He finally spoke, asking if I wanted to move in with him. Then he wondered if asking that way was too abrupt and started to explain. He began speaking haltingly. I stared at Father in shock. It was the first time I'd heard him speak so much. Before he could finish, he said, "I've thought about it, and I still think it's best if we live together. It's more convenient, and I can take care of you. After all, you're not well." I quickly agreed. Otherwise, he might have talked all night. Father was stunned. He hadn't finished speaking, but I had already agreed. In an instant, he hugged me, repeatedly thanking me. At that moment, I felt like the happiest person in the world. Father happily instructed the servants to prepare a room for me. I thought how wonderful it would be if things could always be this joyful. Meanwhile, Aunt next door wasn't so happy. Because Father had scolded the maid that afternoon, Aunt felt he had disrespected Grandmother and was furious. But experience wins out. Grandmother was much calmer. Aunt continued to fume, saying Father was too focused on Lien lately. At this rate, he wouldn't become the head of the Bailey family. Grandmother told Aunt to bring her children to the Bailey residence. She looked at the teacup in her hand. With the two of them here, that little waste would soon lose favor. A little girl who used to scavenge for scraps suddenly became a pampered little princess, her father completely doting on her. Lien nestled in Father's arms, enjoying the long-awaited paternal affection. Father blushed shyly. Suddenly, a commotion arose nearby. Lien looked around and realized it was coming from the hunting grounds. The scene shocked Lien. Why were her cousins here now? They were pointing at a young sparring partner, wanting to compete with him. Xiao Su and Xiao Bai were Aunt's children. She had married into the Su family and given birth to twins. They were being groomed as heirs to both families. Lien looked at them fearfully. In her past life, when she had no one to rely on, the twins had often bullied her. Father noticed Lien's nervousness and patted her reassuringly. Lien asked Father about her cousin's martial arts skills. Father sighed. They looked skilled, but their fundamentals were weak. Their current sparring practice wasn't entirely wrong. Father suddenly looked puzzled. "How do you know they are your cousins, Lien?" Lien could only stammer out an explanation. She couldn't say she was from the future. Fortunately, Father believed her easily. Seeing her twin cousins gave Lien a headache. She decided to avoid them in the future. So for the next few days, Lien stayed in her room embroidering. When Father came, she immediately showed him her embroidery. Father praised it, saying, "It's beautiful." "Are those clouds?" "No, Father, they're pear blossoms." Father awkwardly changed the subject. "If you're bored, you can learn to read with me." "Is Daddy going to teach me personally?" Father excitedly grabbed Lien's hand. "Yes." "Any characters you don't know?" "Even awkward. I learned that decades ago. I've long forgotten." Lien could only stammer, "I haven't really studied." Father smiled, stroking Lien's head, that it's okay. "We can learn slowly." In no time, Father had laid out a complete set of writing materials. Lien trembled, holding the brush. Father guided her hand. Seeing Lien's crooked writing, he tried not to laugh. Lien thought embarrassedly, "I'm not as good as Daddy." Father, stifling his laughter, pretended to decipher the characters. He didn't expect Lien to have actually written his name. Lien was overjoyed. She hadn't thought he'd recognize such messy writing. The next moment, tears welled up in her father's eyes as he looked at her. "I can't believe. I haven't been around to take care of you, but you still remember your father's name." Lien was flustered. She hadn't expected her father to cry. She stood up and patted his head. "I'll write it again later, even better than this time." Father, moved, hugged Lien. But what he said was, children shouldn't stand on chairs. It's too dangerous. He quickly lifted Lien down from the chair. Just then, a servant knocked and entered, saying the head of the family invited him to dinner. The servant looked up and was startled, seeing Father's obviously tear-stained face. Flustered, the servant quickly excused herself. Lien suddenly understood the servant's surprise. She herself had been startled seeing her father cry. But why didn't Grandfather invite me to dinner? Lien followed her father to the dining hall and saw her aunt and twin cousins sitting opposite them. Several minutes passed. No one spoke. The atmosphere was very awkward. Then Grandfather's adjutant came to call Father away. Lien could only obediently watch him leave. As soon as Father left, the twin cousins came up behind Lien, saying spiteful things. "We heard you're a good-for-nothing. Is it true your Dantian is ruined?" Lien remembered how she had deliberately hidden her illness, but they still disliked her, just like in her past life. Even their first words were the same. But this time, Lien wasn't flustered at all. She smiled at them that, "I'll tell father everything you just said." Hearing this, her aunt couldn't sit still. She abruptly stood up, accusing Lien of being a tattletale. Lien tilted her head and looked at her aunt. "I'm just listening to my father." "What's wrong with that?" Her aunt continued to interrogate her. "Do you think you can secure your position just by doing that? Your father can't stay home all the time. What about his duties?" Lien calmly touched her head and replied, "I don't know. If you want to know, I can ask him for you later." Her aunt wanted to say more, but was stopped by her uncle, who had just arrived. The three of them greeted their uncle's family happily. But then, her uncle turned and scolded Lien loudly. "How can you speak to your aunt like that?" Lien wore an I knew it expression. Her cousin, Mingming, intervened. "Father, Lien is still young. Please don't blame her." He then stepped forward and greeted Lien with a smile, introducing his younger sister, Lily. But Lily didn't greet Lien. Instead, she hid behind Mingming. Lien, watching them together, felt envious. They seemed like a real family, while she felt like an outsider. She could only silently pray for her father's return. Finally, it was time to eat. Lien drooled, looking at the table full of delicious food. Her father kept adding food to her bowl. Soon, her father's love had piled up into a small mountain. As everyone ate in silence, grandfather suddenly spoke. "Mingming, have you been practicing your writing lately?" Uncle answered for him. Lien ate heartily, watching them with a full bowl. Grandfather asked the twins and Lily the same question. Lien wondered what grandfather was getting at. The next moment, she was surprised to be asked herself, "Lien, have you been practicing too?" Grandfather then turned to father. "I heard you've been teaching Lien to write." Father, also puzzled, looked at grandfather and answered yes. After questioning everyone, grandfather finally spoke that a teacher Chi is coming here soon. Lien suddenly remembered this teacher from her past life. He was a very famous teacher who had come to this secluded place to open a school to avoid conflict. His reputation attracted many students. Many future officials came from his school. It was a good place for networking. Grandfather wanted the children to study there. In her past life, grandfather hadn't asked for Lien's opinion. The Bali clan has always prioritized martial arts. The other 6 arts are only required to be known superficially. Lien hoped she would have the opportunity to attend classes there. The 7-year-old girl attended the family meeting for the first time, but it only resulted in grandfather's fury. But Lien didn't want to give up such a good learning plan. Grandfather turned to look at the twins. "You don't spend all day practicing swordsmanship, do you?" A few hours of study each day is quite manageable. The twins didn't want to go to the school. They said in unison that they practiced swordsmanship all day long. Such words sounded like a lie, and also realized that grandfather was angry. She immediately stepped forward to explain that the children were all studying diligently. Bali Gong and Bali Tong have already reached the 3rd stage. Hearing this, the twins immediately stood up, proudly accepting uncle's praise. But Lien knew this wasn't anything impressive. The first 5 stages of Bali Gong were very simple, just chopping wood and practicing stances. Only the later stages became truly challenging. Grandfather was the only 10th-stage cultivator in the Bali clan, and father, at such a young age, was about to reach the 90,000th stage. Aunt had once thought her children could surpass father, but that dream had never come true in her past life. Seeing their reluctance, grandfather turned to ask Mingming. Cousin Mingming smiled brightly, expressing his eagerness to go. He added that since the twins were focused on martial arts, as their older brother, he couldn't slack off and must also concentrate on martial arts. Grandfather was already very angry, but he patiently continued. Lien looked at him with a confused expression, ignoring uncle's attempts to cover for her. She innocently replied, "Why should I go? Can't the teacher just come to our house?" Lien was shocked. This was the audacity of a Bali clan granddaughter. Uncle cautiously watched grandfather's expression and could only scold Lien loudly himself. Lily, startled by uncle, ran crying into her brother's arms. Grandfather suddenly roared angrily, "Forget it, then none of you will go." Lien thought, how could it just end like that? Her dantian was ruined. She had hoped to focus on her studies. At this moment, father suddenly addressed grandfather. "You haven't asked Lien's opinion." This statement stunned everyone. The atmosphere fell into a brief silence. Aunt was the first to speak. Father, you're so angry, yet you can ask such a question? Lien and Lily are the same age. Their thoughts must be the same. Grandfather, still irritated, loudly asked for Lien's opinion. Lien replied, I don't know why grandfather is angry. The twins don't want to go to school, not because they don't want to, but because they can't. This statement shocked grandfather. Aunt demanded to know what Lien meant. Lien blinked her large eyes, looking at her aunt in confusion. But aren't my two cousins going into seclusion? The scene instantly became more chaotic, filled with confusion. Lien continued, everyone in the Bailey clan enters seclusion after reaching the third stage. Father did it too, so of course my cousins will also go. I'm so envious of their ability. Unlike me, my dantian is ruined, and I can't cultivate. The twins stood up, wanting to say something, but seeing their father's stern gaze. They swallowed their words. Father patted Lien's head and explained, when their mother was ill, they only secluded themselves for 2 days before coming out. Hearing this, grandfather was moved. After all, the Bailey clan prioritized martial arts. He decided to let the twins enter seclusion. Aunt became anxious. She couldn't bear to let her two sons suffer. Grandfather retorted, I'm so old, and I still went through it. Reaching the third stage at their age is already quite impressive. As their mother, you should be proud of them, and was somewhat persuaded. After all, she hadn't reached the third stage until she was 12. Compared to her always brilliant husband, she was quite ordinary. It would be wonderful if the twins could surpass her. But the twins, unwilling to suffer, immediately requested to attend school. Lien knew grandfather's stubborn nature. Either all the children would go to school, or none of them would. Lien gambled and successfully passed the hot potato to her cousins. She even leisurely enjoyed her food, picking up a morsel to offer her father. Grandfather watched the brightly smiling Lien on one side and the chaotic scene on the other. He felt very annoyed, sensing that no one was paying attention to him. He deliberately found fault. Why is Lien so thin? Do you not feed her every day? Lien, eating her dumplings, was so startled she spat them out. Father calmly patted Lien's back and replied, it seems today's dishes are very much to her liking. Lien echoed, Grandfather, please try some. Unexpectedly, grandfather told Lien to take some to him. So Lien picked some of the tastiest dishes and brought them over. Grandfather immediately started eating. Lien scolded, who told you to take so much? She snatched the plate and began eating to hide her embarrassment. However, she still muttered that the food was just average. Grandfather told Lien to go back and rest. Lien wondered why they had to leave so suddenly. She hadn't finished eating, but she obediently followed her father back. The next day, their house was filled with gifts from grandfather. This puzzled Lien. Why would grandfather send so many gifts? She quickly realized why. Although grandfather was angry, he still arranged for everyone to go to school. She hadn't expected him to be so kind. Just being able to attend school was a joyous occasion. Grandfather even instructed the teacher to look after her health. Lien felt she should find a way to show her gratitude. She decided to embroider something for grandfather. But the reality was, even she couldn't recognize what she had embroidered. Thankfully, she had given up on embroidering his name. Otherwise, grandfather would surely think it was a curse. She planned to sneak into grandfather's room and leave the embroidery, but she was caught red-handed. She had planned to leave quietly after placing the gift. Suddenly, grandfather's voice startled her. Instinctively, she looked back. She lost her balance and bumped against the edge of the bed, feeling dizzy. Fortunately, grandfather caught her just in time. Grandfather nervously asked Lien, Am I that scary? Lien, trembling, said she thought she had seen a ghost. Why was grandfather sneaking in like a thief? Then she realized she shouldn't have said that and bowed sincerely to apologize. Grandfather found her series of actions rather baffling. Finally, grandfather pretended nothing had happened. He then asked Lien if she was looking for something. Lien blushed shyly. She had wanted to leave the gift secretly, but she was caught. After hesitating for a moment, she took a handkerchief from her bag. Attached to the handkerchief was a crooked thank you note. Grandfather even suspected it was someone else's sleeve paper. Lien felt a little hurt. Pointing to the pattern on the handkerchief, she explained it was a rabbit, but she suddenly stopped. Although the pattern resembled a rabbit, it was actually meant to be flowers and butterflies. She could only ask grandfather evasively if he liked rabbits. Seeing grandfather's lack of response, she was about to explain further. However, grandfather unexpectedly kept the handkerchief and asked a surprising question. He asked if her twin cousins could reach the third stage. Lien wondered why grandfather would ask such a question, but she answered honestly. Grandfather knew Lien was a clever child. He was doing all this to help her. Lien was surprised Grandfather had guessed her intentions. She knew Grandfather wanted everyone to go to school, so she had deliberately spoken as she did. However, Grandfather didn't react with the expected reprimand. Instead, he expressed concern for Lien. Her frail health and family circumstances made her vulnerable to bullying. Her father couldn't always intervene in children's squabbles. But in fact, Lien had already been bullied by the twins. She told Grandfather about what had happened before the meal. This harsh reality angered and saddened Grandfather. He couldn't believe they could say such hurtful things. He was also angry that Lien hadn't told her father. Lien explained it was just a children's quarrel. As long as she improved her health and learned swordsmanship, she wouldn't be bullied again. She wanted to become strong, like Grandfather and father. This declaration startled Grandfather. He even saw a glimpse of his son in Lien. After talking with Grandfather, Lien fell asleep. Father arrived and was shocked by the scene. He thought Grandfather had forced Lien to stay. Grandfather looked at Lien, acknowledging she was a smart and understanding child. He then took out the handkerchief from his pocket. Giving a handkerchief to a martial arts master? Her needlework is quite good. This rabbit is quite pitifully embroidered, he remarked. Father looked at the handkerchief. Puzzled, aren't those flowers and butterflies? Grandfather retorted defensively. It's a rabbit. Lien made this to thank me for sending her to school. After saying this, Grandfather's tone softened. Of the 5 children I sent to school, she's the only one who genuinely thanked me. Father simply replied, it's good that Lien is all right. This indifferent reaction pained Grandfather. Everyone else would be desperately showing off their own children. Only this son of mine is clueless. What is he even looking at? No wonder Lien has to constantly prove herself. Sensing his expression becoming a bit unhinged, Grandfather awkwardly changed the subject. As a girl from a martial arts family, how can I just teach myself every day? I should be learning more swordsmanship. Grandfather thought about asking Lien about her father during dinner. Although drowsy, he was aware of everything. He knew his mother had abandoned him, and he had no dignity. Late at night, Father held the sleeping Lien and went to Grandfather. Soon it was time for school. But because Grandfather and Father worried about Lien's health, they only allowed her to attend 1 class a day. On her way back from class, Lien saw her twin cousins leading a group of classmates raiding a bird's nest. The mother bird, trying to protect her young, was fluttering around the intertwined branches. Lien initially intended to just go home, but at the doorway, she suddenly changed her mind. Lien tore off a piece of her elaborate sleeve and gave it to a servant, asking him to take it to the teaching assistant and see if the students could be dismissed early. Lien hid behind a tree, peeking out to watch. A moment later, the teaching assistant came to the courtyard and called the children over. Lien went to the tree and saw the injured bird. Carefully, she cupped it in her handkerchief. She wanted to have the servant return the bird to its nest, but a boy who suddenly appeared stopped her. The bird's wing was broken. Even if it were returned, it would be abandoned. Lien looked at the bird and saw that its wing was indeed injured. Lien felt a pang of empathy. The injured bird would be abandoned even if it returned home. The boy noticed Lien's sadness and changed the subject. Did you get the children dismissed early? He asked, puzzled why she hadn't just told him directly. Thinking of her 2 troublesome twin cousins, Lien loathed them. How could they possibly listen? But family shame should not be aired publicly. Because the twins were so competitive, stopping them would only make things worse. This answer, however, made the boy burst out laughing. Lien, still unaware of the boy's hidden identity, just wanted to leave quickly in the face of his laughter. But the boy continued to chatter relentlessly behind her. He asked Lien what would happen to the bird now that they were leaving. Lien was heartbroken. She knew the bird's fate was like her own. Even if she returned home, her mother would reject her. If she took it back to the Bailey house, her twin cousins might kill it. Then the boy said he could treat the bird. He introduced himself as Xiao Shi, a distant relative of Physician Shi. Lien followed him to a room, observing the luxurious decorations of the courtyard and thinking that being a doctor must be a lucrative profession. The courtyard was filled with pink flowers, unlike the white peonies at the Bailey house. Xiao Shi smiled, praising the beauty of the Bailey family's pear garden and offering Lien some flowers to take home. Lien was bewildered by the boy's excessive kindness. Why was he being so nice to her? Suddenly, Lien looked into the distance and asked if the boy's father was coming, but the boy smiled and said no. Lien walked closer, but it was still too far to see clearly. She gave up, thinking she had been mistaken. The boy chatted as he led the way. Lien couldn't understand why he said his father wasn't there. They had clearly arrived together. A moment later, the bird's wing was bandaged with gauze, but even healed, it couldn't be released back into the wild. Lien had to ask the boy to take care of it. She was struggling to take care of herself. How could she protect a bird? The boy burst into laughter again. He already knew Lien's situation at home, yet he still asked. But this was good. Since he knew, she wouldn't have to pretend anymore. She hoped they wouldn't try to trick her after this. Suddenly, the boy leaned in with a smile that I hope we can be good friends. Lien rode home in the carriage, holding the peonies Xiaoshi had given her. She was surprised he had even found a special container for them. He seemed nice enough, though his words were sometimes annoying. Lien had already decided what to do with the flowers. One would go in her father's study, another in her own room, and the last one would be made into a sachet for grandfather. He would probably feign disapproval as always. Soon the carriage arrived home, but a man in black, holding a sword, stood at the gate. From the carriage, Lien saw her father's friend, the young master of the Nangong family, being stopped at the gate. The guards didn't want him to interfere. The guard recognized the man and was about to speak, but Nangong Wan stopped him with a whispered, "Don't say anything." He then decided to test his friend's daughter, claiming to have an invitation, but the guards still refused him entry. Seeing the guard's frustration and knowing Nangong Wan didn't want his identity revealed, Lien took the invitation. The calligraphy on the receipt was beautiful, and it truly was her father's handwriting and seal. The child's response, inviting him in, made the man want to laugh. But the guard gave Lien no face, still refusing entry. Seeing this, she knew something was amiss. The guard claimed her father was out, and therefore they couldn't go to his residence. It seemed her father really had gone to the Shi family. But why did the boy lie to her? The guard hastily offered to find the young miss, while the man took the opportunity to suggest the girl return home. He could wait here. Guests of my father are my guests. Bored, Lien asked, "What's in the box you're holding, Lien?" Lien opened the flower box and recounted the day's events, sharing her plans for each flower. Seeing the small, delicate flowers, Lien also wished for a daughter. But amidst her chatter, Lien remembered Nangong Wan's purpose. He had come for her father's birthday. He had brought a gift, but her father had refused it. She'd heard they had a fierce argument, and perhaps her father had died because of it. Thinking of this, she blushed and said cutely, "Uncle, you're my father's friend. Since you're here, it's fate. You should give my father your gift." She was so anxious, the awkward atmosphere became comical. Unexpectedly, Nangong Wan burst into deafening laughter. Looking at the man laughing uproariously, Lien was bewildered. "Did I say something wrong?" He replied, "I've lived so long, but I never thought I'd meet a robber at the Bai Li family's gate." Instantly mortified, Lien was embarrassed. However, Nangong Wan seemed to enjoy teasing the little girl. "If I give her a gift, what will you do for me? Why don't you make me a fragrant sachet too?" Lien shyly declined, but the man insisted. Unable to escape, Lien finally gave in. "But you can't be angry if my father refuses your gift." Having received her promise, he agreed. Nangong Wan, finding the girl adorable, couldn't resist wanting to pat her head. But a scornful voice interrupted him. "Isn't she supposed to be sick? Looks like she's faking it." Hearing the mocking voice behind her, Lien's eyes turned icy. Causing trouble in front of Nangong Wan? It seemed they didn't know who he was. They noticed the box Lien was holding and, without a word, tried to open it. Learning it was just flowers, they still persisted. "Give me one. I want to give it to Lily. I think it would be perfect for Lily. She's sick and didn't go to school today. You wouldn't be so stingy as to not share a single flower, would you?" My cousin was there too, and Lien definitely understood what we meant. "Lily is your sister. You should share nice things." Pressured by the three, Lien gave one of her twin cousins a flower, but they intentionally didn't catch it, letting it fall to the ground. Then they played the victim. Why didn't Bai Lien catch it? Nangong Wan watched, his anger rising. Just as he was about to explode at the bratty children, Lien slammed the box shut and handed it to the three. "Didn't you say you wanted to give it to Lily? If you hold the box properly, even if it drops, the flowers won't be crushed." Understanding the sarcasm, the twins flushed with shame. Lily and her companion took the box and left. Nangong Wan saw everything, thinking Lien was just like her father. After they left, Nangong Wan asked Lien why she had stopped him earlier Didn't you want to keep your identity a secret? The man was startled. He hadn't expected Lien to know. But why was his friend's precious daughter so calm in the face of such a situation? The truth must be even worse than the rumors I've heard. Unable to contain himself, he immediately revealed his identity. Lien was amazed by his swiftness, but as soon as they entered the house, she fainted. She woke up the next day. Before entering the room, she heard a heated argument inside. To eliminate the factors contributing to her father's death, she rushed in to intervene. "Father, please don't blame Uncle Nangong too harshly." The room fell silent for a few seconds. Nangong was struggling to suppress his laughter. Making her face flush crimson, Lien begged the two to stop arguing, until her father suddenly picked her up. "Why do you look so pale?" "I'm sorry. It's my fault for making you witness this." Although the guards had been punished, Nangong was still dissatisfied. Lien could see the two men still harbored resentment. No longer feigning ignorance, Lien asked, "Father, don't you find it strange? The guards knew they would be punished, so why did they insist on doing that?" Unfortunately, her father was kind and gentle, completely oblivious to the intrigues within the household. Lien was fully aware of her father's reputation in the martial arts world. His friends were no ordinary people. They were the very people her uncle and aunt were vying to meet. She was certain they would soon use an apology as an excuse to invite Uncle Nangong to dinner. The man's sharp perception made him chuckle. "It seems you're not as foolish as you appear, little girl." Lien's father scowled at having his daughter called foolish. That evening, unable to sleep, Nangong took out Shi's medal. "With this, he will definitely cure your daughter. But this person's whereabouts are unknown. We need money to track him down." Meanwhile, the twins had just entered their room and thrown the flowers away. They kept complaining, "Lien is a good-for-nothing, and yet you're so fond of her." At this moment, Mingming felt uneasy, recalling the unknown person who had spoken ill of Lien. Hearing this, the twins showed no concern, dismissing it as someone unimportant. Their obliviousness gave Bai Li Mingming a headache. After all, he was always the one cleaning up their messes. He reminded them to be mindful of their words and actions, but the twins paid no attention. Fuming, Mingming silently seethed, while also telling himself he was overthinking things. That evening, however, his father invited the two men over. Although it was a shame the top 5 alliance leaders hadn't come, getting to know their sons wasn't bad either. He was secretly annoyed that his younger brother had such good connections, but wanted to keep them to himself. Fortunately, he had bribed the guards in advance. To show his sincerity, he specifically mentioned that he had sent the guards away and forbidden them from ever setting foot in the Bai Li estate again. Recalling the incident with the guards and what Lien had said earlier, the two men exchanged glances, understanding the deception. Before they could respond, their aunt arrived, as usual, full of flattery, saying her sons had long admired the great hero and insisted on coming to pay their respects. Their uncle also took the opportunity to introduce them. None of these men recognized that this was the same Fei Yi from earlier. The men kept glancing at Nangong. Seeing the children who had bullied Lien, his face immediately hardened. Oblivious to the tension, their aunt continued to chatter. "I heard you have a son who's also a prodigy. Perhaps they could become friends sometime." Nangong showed no mercy that my child only plays with children of similar ability. Although embarrassed by his sons being belittled, their uncle, flustered and eager, tried to promote the twins they're about to master the 3rd level of the Bai Li divine skill. Looking at the two nervous and apprehensive boys, he scoffed. The atmosphere instantly became excruciatingly awkward. Even his friend was taken aback. Their uncle hurriedly tried to smooth things over, flattering Nangong while talking about the children's genuine eagerness to learn, that if he could offer them some guidance, it would be of great help to them. Lien's father also echoed the request for guidance. Nangong remained silent for a moment, then finally asked his friend to leave first. Lien's father realized Nangong had intentionally dismissed him, but even his older brother urged him to go, so he reluctantly agreed. Looking at the group in the pavilion, Lien's father worried about what might happen. Nangong had been the target of flattery since childhood, showered with countless rare treasures. Those people were simply after the Nangong family's influence. Bluntly, Nangong said, making their uncle's face darken, "You're just using them." But that wasn't the end of it, you're Lily, right? Let me ask you something. Did you receive flowers? This question startled the three of them. They finally realized who this person was. Mingming quickly prompted her, You received them, didn't you? They were really beautiful, weren't they? Lily, bewildered, agreed with her brother. What color were the flowers you received? Having only seen the white peonies at home, Lily naturally answered, white. Nangongwan burst out laughing. He knew instantly the flowers hadn't reached the girl, then suddenly changed to flowers of humiliation. The Bailey family's eldest grandson. He's a sensible and outstanding child. As for dinner, you should take care of your family affairs first. If everyone sees the Bailey family like this, it will only ruin the Bailey family head's reputation. He then looked at the twins. Hands that can't even hold a flower, how can they hold a sword? With one scolding, their uncle made the twins cry. Their aunt was also furious and speechless. Is this person crazy? As the matter spread throughout the Bailey family, the guard felt guilty. While he was away, the young miss was bullied by the twins. Although Lien felt embarrassed, she admired Uncle Nangongwan. His ability to take action was truly terrifying. She then unexpectedly saw the familiar flower box on the table. Isn't this the one the twins snatched? Upon opening it, she saw the red peonies. This must be from Father. Sure enough, after inquiring, she learned Father went to Physician Sher's house last night. Her face instantly lit up. She hugged the flower box tightly, eager to see her father. She had originally come to thank him, but encountered an unexpected boy. He claimed to be Lien's friend and entered her residence uninvited. He even started drinking tea on his own. Lien pouted. Why are you suddenly here? The boy answered evasively. I heard you're going to the Nangong family estate. It was clear her father had told him. Suddenly, the conversation shifted. Physician Sher is coming back tomorrow to see you, so you need to take your medicine quickly. Lien, not wanting to take the medicine, looked utterly despondent. She could only obediently finish it while answering him. But did you come here just to tell me this? Lien still couldn't understand the boy's intentions and didn't want to interact with him too much. Suddenly, the boy laughed that, of course, it's because I miss you. Can't I come and see you? Hearing this, Lien was dumbfounded. The boy then put on a heartbroken expression, saying it was his first time making a friend. Lien broke out in a cold sweat. What's wrong with this kid? When did they become so close? The boy even brought Lien a pot of peony seedlings as a gift. I heard yesterday that young Master Bali picked 3 blossoms. Since it's related to you, I specifically brought you a seedling to admire. A thread of warmth crept into Lien's heart, but she didn't understand why he was so kind to her. I'll be leaving for a while. The twins won't let Mingming off. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel sad. Her sorrowful expression made the boy's heart ache. He mistakenly thought Lien didn't like the peonies. Misunderstood, Lien immediately said she liked them. Seeing Lien's dejected look, the boy thought about what he had just seen and what she should like. He then smiled brightly. I saw something very interesting. Meanwhile, grandfather sat solemnly, with a circle of people kneeling beneath him. Unexpectedly, the aunt had gone to complain, exaggerating and accusing Nangongwan of being rude and presumptuous. Grandfather, who knew everything, deliberately asked, why would Nangongwan do such a thing? The aunt pretended ignorance, continuing to talk about how heartbroken the children were to hear such words. Secretly, she was scheming. Only her brother and Nangongwan were present at the time, and their servants were loyal to her. As long as she insisted they were lying, it would be fine. Her plans went awry. Grandfather asked ruthlessly, what about the peonies? Hearing this, it was clear grandfather knew everything, but the aunt refused to admit it. She claimed it was a bet about the marriage alliance, and her sons were just joking with that girl. Nangongwan, an outsider, has no right to interfere in Bailey family matters. Grandfather was so angry he nearly had a heart attack. Who is it that has no sense of propriety and no shame? Furious, grandfather gave the aunt 3 choices. Either you leave, or you send the twins away, or all 3 of you get out. Just then, the butler announced someone had arrived. Upon entering, Lien saw everyone's hostile gazes. Lien politely greeted them. Grandfather, still fuming, scolded her, bringing outsiders here. He insisted on coming. A certain someone took full responsibility. Lien introduced the boy as her good friend and lifted the potted plant to show grandfather. However, the small pot was still too heavy for Lien. Fortunately, Mingming, who was beside her, helped steady it so she wouldn't fall. This action drew the aunt's glare. Bailey Ming, what are you doing? Her brother's face turned pale with fright. Lien seized the opportunity and quickly darted behind the boy to hide. To protect her father, Lien decided to stop playing dumb. Under her aunt's threatening glare, she immediately hid behind her brother, feigning a frightened appearance. Meanwhile, Bailey Ming was watching Zhang Jinwei. Grandfather, seeing that Zheng Jinwei was clearly intimidated by the aunt's threats and about to lose his temper, reached out to protect Lien. Protecting Lien was now the right choice, and this was also part of her plan. The aunt was furious at this scene. "How dare you help that little wretch in front of me?" She continued ranting and raving. Fearing she would say something she shouldn't, her elder brother pressed her sleep acupuncture point. The priority now was to calm grandfather down. It would be easier to appease his sister later. The twins quickly surrounded their mother, crying and whimpering. Her son sincerely apologized, and only then did the uncle prepare to let his sister go. Grandfather, though appearing exasperated, decided not to pursue the matter further. Lien knew her grandfather was just putting on a tough act. He wouldn't let it go so easily. It seemed like the aunt's family had been driven away, but they would definitely be back in a few years. Such a punishment was practically harmless. So, Lien stepped forward, holding a potted plant, and said she was fine. She had even gained a peony out of the misfortune. Ba Ming had always been on good terms with the twins, so he felt awkward about stopping them. He hoped grandfather wouldn't be angry with him because of this. Hearing this, Ba Ming felt both touched and conflicted. After all, the flowers would bloom again next year. Lien's words showed her magnanimity and also pleaded for her cousin. Although grandfather still appeared gruff, Lien had achieved her goal. Grandfather was always like this, harsh on the outside but soft on the inside. She knelt obediently beside her father, letting her grandfather vent his anger. Ming, accustomed to grandfather's punishments, had been disciplined. Lien and the boy came to visit him. They also brought special medicine prescribed by the imperial physician. At this moment, Ming felt more annoyed than pained by the beating. In the end, he was the only one punished and confined to his room, while the twins got away scot-free. Yet, they were the ones who caused all the trouble. Lien also offered her concern at the right moment. Witnessing the closeness between the two, the twins couldn't help but grab Ming's sleeve and question him. Lien simply observed their quarrel silently. This drama was just beginning. The frail, good-for-nothing girl, in her first act of defiance, gave the twins a taste of their own medicine. Seeing Lien's intimacy with Ming, the twins finally lost their composure. "You knew that person was Nangong Wan, but you deliberately didn't tell us, didn't you? That's why you obediently gave them the flowers." Lien turned to face them, expressionless. Then, a smile played on her lips. A peculiar sound reached only the twins' ears. "Yes, I knew he was the young master of the Nangong family all along." The boy, scowling, closed the door for Lien. Just as the door was about to shut, Lien looked back with a subtle smile. "So what? I let you ruin the flowers." The twins were instantly petrified. As soon as they left the courtyard, the boy grabbed Lien. "How did you damage your body like this?" Even when caught, Lien didn't panic. She feigned ignorance. The boy realized Lien wasn't showing any ill effects. Just as he was puzzled, Lien's nose started to bleed. Everything became clear. "Did you use your prenatal chi? That's the life force everyone is born with." In her past life, in her pursuit of martial arts, she had read extensively, finally learning from a forbidden book how to wield prenatal chi like inner force. The clever boy, however, knew this was the side effect of using sound transmission. He also knew that depleting prenatal chi would lead to the depletion of life itself. The boy's perceptiveness embarrassed Lien. She tried to push his hand away. "As long as you don't say anything, I won't ask any more questions." Lien could only obediently let the boy cup her face and wipe the blood. She hadn't expected the boy to be so insightful at such a young age. "That I know what you're thinking. You want to use Ba Ming too. Seeing your aunt and uncle's relationship." Hearing this, Lien instantly became wary. But the boy just grinned mischievously. Don't look at me like that. If you agree to one request, I'll keep your secret." Lien not only watched the boy, but even after going to the Nangong family for medical consultation, "You must write to me often." The sickly girl, previously thought to be useless, is finally about to awaken her martial abilities. Before she could see how her aunt would leave, she was told by her father that they had to leave immediately for the Nangong family estate. Lien knew this trip was to seek out the renowned physician Wan. This time, she absolutely couldn't miss this only opportunity to treat her Dantian. Early in the morning, she was awakened by a familiar voice. It was her rivalrous cousin coming to see her off. He looked quite haggard, suggesting that her aunt's family had been giving her uncle's family a hard time recently. It seemed her plan to sow discord had begun to bear fruit. Ming looked around anxiously, seemingly searching for something. Then he urged Lien to take good care of herself. Lian hadn't expected Mingming to come see her off. It turned out he was there to give her a painting, expressing his profuse apologies to Nangongwan. Lian's head was spinning from all the talk. She wished she could run away like Nangongwan. The next moment, Mingming handed her some fading crab given by her uncle. The little money grubber in her perked up immediately, retracting her earlier thought of running away. With money, I'll definitely help out. A short while later, they set off on their journey. Unwilling to waste time, Lian quietly embroidered in the carriage. Working on the sachet, she promised Nangongwan. After embroidering a few lumps of unknown species, Lian finally succumbed to motion sickness. She hadn't realized she was prone to it. Her already weak body suffered even more. In a daze, she saw her father's worried and gentle expression. At that moment, it felt like a dream. She felt the warmth of his internal energy flowing through her head, along with his soothing voice. Don't worry, sleep for a while. She drifted off to sleep unknowingly. When she woke up again, several days had passed, and she was in a completely unfamiliar place. But the warmth in her palm continued. Her father had been by her side the whole time, gently using his internal energy to regulate her body. A rush of warmth welled up in her eyes. Seeing his daughter awake, her father gave a gentle smile. Even though her dantian was ruined and she couldn't cultivate martial arts like a prodigy, her father still cared for her tenderly. Worried that she might be tired, he was about to bring her food upstairs. Unexpectedly, Lian insisted on going downstairs to eat. Faced with her determination, he carried her downstairs for their meal. Because her body hadn't fully recovered, her father still ordered porridge for her. Lian put on a pitiful expression and whined, I want to eat steamed buns. I've been drinking porridge for days. Her expectant look made her father unable to refuse. He ordered a table full of dishes Lian liked. Uncharacteristically outgoing, Lian proudly boasted to the waiter about her father's impressive swordsmanship, successfully gaining his favor. He warned them to be careful, as children had been going missing recently. This was the reason Lian insisted on coming downstairs. The same thing had happened in her past life, preventing her from receiving physician Wan's treatment. But this time, Lian wasn't afraid at all, because Daddy will protect me, won't you, Daddy? Faced with his daughter's flattery, her father just nodded proudly, overflowing with fatherly love. This made Nangong Wan, who had just arrived with his female guard, chuckle. But his face turned serious as he added, 40 children have already gone missing. Seeing her father's furrowed brow, Lian wasn't surprised. Her father had worried about this same issue in her past life. Physician Wan was elusive. To keep up with him, they had to leave immediately. Unfortunately, they had run into this missing children incident. With his kind nature, her father couldn't simply ignore it. Nangong Wan, knowing his friend's life was at stake, reminded him, we don't have much time. Not wanting his daughter to worry, he prepared to pull her away. However, Lian knew her father didn't want her to worry, but she had come downstairs specifically to learn about the situation. She could only feign childishness, clinging to her father and whining, I'll be scared alone. Nangong Wan sprayed out the tea he had just taken sip of. Weren't you just saying you weren't afraid? Lian just shook Nangong Wan's shoulder, continuing to act spoiled. That's because father and uncle are here, so I'm not afraid. At that moment, a man carrying a long spear suddenly appeared. Lian recognized him. It was Yu Zhonghai, the second son of the Yu family, one of the 10 great families. He was overjoyed to see Lian, practically jumping for joy. He was captivated by the adorable girl, petting her head affectionately and showering her with questions. Nangong Wan, feeling a pang of jealousy, swatted the man's hand away. Zhonghai, however, cluelessly brought up a sensitive topic. You didn't even tell me. And she's so grown up. You didn't even tell me you were getting married. The atmosphere instantly froze. Zhonghai looked around, bewildered, unsure what he'd said wrong. Exasperated, Nangong Wan could only change the subject. Why are you here? It turned out the Wulin sect had sent these rising stars to search for the missing children. There were 4 of them in the group. Unlike their highly skilled seniors who could operate alone, these youngsters chattered incessantly. Suddenly remembering something, one of them quickly excused himself and ran back, returning with a candied hawthorn stick. With a beaming smile, he offered it. Used to caring for his 6 younger siblings, he was naturally nurturing. Even Lian, who had never seen such a thing in either of her lives, cautiously took a bite. The sweet and sour flavor filled her with happiness. Joyfully, she shared it with her father. Father, you try some too. Obediently, the man took a gentle bite from the candied hawthorn his daughter offered. The overly sweet taste made him furrow his brow. He still complimented it, though, saying it was delicious. Their heartwarming interaction made Nangong Wan scowl. He could only direct his frustration at the culprit. So, my 5 bowls of rice were for nothing, and I don't even get a candied hawthorn? My anger. Startled, Zhonghai rushed to make amends. His childish behavior left Lien speechless. Realizing Nangong Wan was envious, she quickly offered her own candied hawthorn. "Uncle, you try some too." Nangong Wan opened his mouth, and a large strawberry went in. As the young disciple excitedly ran off with the candied hawthorn, Nangong Wan, having gotten what he wanted, was no longer interested. "I'm not eating anymore." "You eat it." Watching their childish antics, Lien couldn't help but laugh. Having unexpectedly transmigrated into the daughter of a prestigious martial arts family, she played the fool, hiding her true strength. They followed Zhonghai to the Shadow Gate. All the rising stars of the martial arts world were stunned. Their 2 idols had appeared before them. Due to the sect leader's illness, the deputy sect leader was temporarily in charge. He mistakenly believed the 2 had come to assist. He eagerly explained the missing children case. Initially, only beggar children were disappearing. Gradually, children from families began to vanish as well. It wasn't until numerous reports were filed that they realized over 50 people were missing. Panic spread, and parents kept their children indoors. Lien and her father realized the gravity of the situation. Other investigators returned, each introducing themselves. They were starstruck by the 2 renowned martial artists. It was an honor to work with them. Lien's father, aware of the misunderstanding, felt conflicted about whether to help. Lien, however, quickly dispelled his concerns. "We were just passing through, seeing if we could be of any assistance." Her doting father could only go along with her. "We're actually about to leave. My daughter's illness isn't doing well. We can't stay here for too long." The same predicament as her past life filled her with a sense of helplessness. Her father was once again putting her needs above his own life. The team expressed their understanding. This was their mission, after all. For parents, nothing was more important than their child's health. Just as they were about to leave, Lien grabbed her father's arm. "That I'm fine. Let's resolve this first, then we'll go." Lien knew that if they left, these young martial artists would be in mortal danger. The missing children case was no longer a simple matter. It was a series of murders committed by a demonic cultivator. "I've heard you never turn a blind eye to those in need, Father. I've always admired you and wanted to be like you. But if you rush to treat my illness and ignore those in need, I won't be able to say I want to be like you anymore." These were just excuses to prevent her father from blaming himself. In her past life, they eventually found a hospital in another province, but were refused treatment. This intensified her father's self-blame. Lien didn't want him to suffer that again. It was a mutual understanding between daughter and father. Remembering her father's regret in her past life, Lien couldn't bear to see him suffer again. Her father swelled with pride for his understanding and kind daughter. Nangong Wan, standing beside them, was furious. "Don't come crying to me when you regret this." He stormed off in exasperation. Later that night, Lien was awakened by commotion outside. She stepped out to find the area brightly lit. Just as she was about to ask her father what was happening, Lien heard the 2 people in front crying and saying that Beichuan was dead. Even the incredulous Deng Das Wang. Although this incident also happened in her past life, the outbreak wasn't this. Could it be because her father and uncle stayed behind? Thinking of something, Lien suddenly asked where Uncle Nangong was. Meanwhile, the others were still examining Beichuan's body and discovered there were no signs of struggle. He was killed by a single blow from the front. The experienced Nangong Wan guessed that he was killed by someone he knew. The unique wound looked particularly familiar to him. Besides, it was impossible for a martial artist to be killed without even attempting to fight back. Zhonghai also went to check the surroundings. There was nothing. Putting everything together, everyone instantly understood. While everyone was stunned, the killer suddenly jumped up and attacked. Facing the sudden betrayal of the deputy sect leader, Nangong Wan desperately tried to defend himself. The 2 who were just about to help also realized something was wrong. They had completely lost their inner energy. Even Nangong Wan was poisoned. Seeing that everyone was incapacitated, the deputy sect leader laughed loudly. He explained that he had poisoned the water on their way there. After speaking, he prepared to fight them, but was stopped by Tang Xiaolong, the only one with inner energy remaining. Because the Tang clan specializes in hidden weapons, he was afraid of being discovered and hadn't targeted him. The deputy sect leader was also lucky not to have been killed by a single blow. Seeing this, the surrounding people anxiously tried to help. However, all the flying darts were blocked by the deputy sect leader. Other companions also launched attacks, but the man knocked them both to the ground with a single move. Their lives hung in the balance. The man quickly attacked Nangongwan. Just at the critical moment, a white light flew from behind. Its speed was so great that it caused a gust of wind. The newcomer was Lian's father, dressed in white, reincarnated as a good-for-nothing young lady. Yet she has a father who makes the martial arts world tremble in fear. At the crucial moment, her father arrived, dressed in white. The deputy sect leader was both enraged and shocked by his arrival. "How could you be here?" But that's what Lian's father wanted to ask. "How are you still alive after I split your face in two?" Nangongwan finally realized. This man was actually Qian Ginio. No wonder the wound on the body looked so familiar. Since he had been exposed, he dropped the pretense. He ripped off his mask, revealing a muscular, scarred face. 10 years ago, he was the fiend who kidnapped children. His martial arts skills were extremely high, and he was skilled in force combat. He was already notorious for murder, and everyone was helpless against him. 10 years ago, Lian's father had severely injured the fiend, forcing him to flee. But no one expected him to survive such grievous injuries. Lian's father cautiously instructed Tang Xiaolong to tend to Nangongwan's injuries first. He would fight the fiend alone and distract him. This bold move humiliated the fiend, who dared to do this right in front of him. However, despite using all his skills, every move was countered by Lian's father, who also subtly lured him in another direction. Everyone watching was shocked by how easily he was handling the fight. Qian Ginio, skilled in forest combat, noticed the uneven terrain and immediately ran towards the dense forest, hoping to gain an advantage. Unafraid, Lian's father followed him. Everyone finally had a chance to breathe. Zhonghai, relaxing for a moment, couldn't help but cough up blood. Checking on them, it was discovered that everyone had been poisoned to varying degrees. Fortunately, they had been rescued in time. Meanwhile, Lian's father, having followed the fiend into the forest, lost sight of him. The fiend was hiding in the treetops, waiting to strike. However, even with his stealth, Lian's father was able to accurately and quickly defend himself. Seeing his attacks failing, the fiend started talking, trying to distract Lian's father. "I recently heard something interesting. Your daughter's poor health is actually because she's a good-for-nothing with a sealed dantian." Hearing this, Lian's father didn't panic but attacked even more fiercely. After one blow, the fiend disappeared again, his laughter echoing from all directions, that a good-for-nothing in a prestigious martial arts family. Lian's father's display of martial arts shocked everyone. Unfazed by the fiend's taunts, Lian's father closed his eyes, focusing his senses to pinpoint the fiend's location despite the distracting laughter. He successfully blocked the fiend's attack. Seeing the sneak attack fail, the fiend resorted to verbal attacks again. "How many days do you think your daughter can survive in this Jianghu?" This is exactly what father was worried about. Their sword auras unified in an instant. The old fiend immediately seized the opportunity to attack Dai. Lin Li's palm transformed into sword energy, slicing across Dai's neck. The gushing blood stained the grass red. But in the next second, he suddenly sensed danger. He quickly tilted his head, dodging Nangongwan's attack. From behind, Dai's sword also lunged forward with full force. The old fiend, reacting swiftly, immediately twisted his body to evade the blow. He avoided a direct hit, but was still seriously injured. Realizing the situation was unfavorable, he immediately leaped up and started to run. In his condition, he couldn't fight two people. Father, also injured, could only instruct Nangongwan to pursue him. But the escaping old fiend was quite perplexing. Why was Bai Yigong's rescue so timely? And Lian, who seemed to have foreseen the events, was worshipped like a fairy. The men were effusive in their praise, extolling her as a goddess. This made Lian both embarrassed and helpless. Familiar with the plot, she had sensed the danger to Nangongwan and the others. She could only lie, claiming to have seen it in a dream. She had even resorted to whining and rolling around to get father to save them. Although her childish behavior still made her cringe, she was also thankful she had done so, as it saved the lives of those around her. Just then, someone delivered a message for father to return. The white-robed man, though wrapped in bandages, still exuded an ethereal aura. Seeing his daughter carrying a wooden box towards him, he hurriedly stopped her with a hand, preventing her from getting close. After all, he was currently covered in grime. Meanwhile, Nangong Wan, in pursuit, successfully located the fiend's lair. Hearing this, Lien felt a pang of sadness. The children were likely no longer there. Unexpectedly, the next moment, she heard the unbelievable news. There was a survivor. When she saw the child father brought in, her heart involuntarily began to pound. She held the snacks Zhonghai had bought for her, generously sharing them with the boy. However, the boy remained silent, not uttering a word. Seeing this, Lien could only personally hand the snacks to him. But looking at him, she felt a strange familiarity, like the first time she saw her father's wound. Her neck itched. When she learned the boy's name was Yelu, she suddenly remembered he was the main villain in the book. He should be in the Valley of Villains right now. Why was he here? Lien hid behind the door, secretly listening to everyone's discussion about his arrangements. The child had suffered many injuries and didn't speak much. Unexpectedly, the next moment, Lien, eavesdropping, was discovered. She had to feign innocence, walking in and saying, "I want to see the child father brought back." She made it seem like she just wanted to find a child her age to play with. So the two went aside to discuss whether to let Lien in. Finally, they yielded to Lien's cuteness that if the child doesn't want to talk, don't bother him. Okay, Lien agreed obediently. With her heart pounding, she entered the room. To prevent the events of her past life from recurring, she had to figure out why Yelu was here. But upon seeing him clearly, she couldn't help but tremble with fear. She had died by his hand in her previous life. He looked exactly the same. Why hadn't she recognized him just now? Lien stood awkwardly at the door, momentarily speechless. Unexpectedly, the boy reached out toward the flower. Instantly, the flower withered. This was a wicked martial art that absorbed the life force of others and converted it into internal energy. Lien quickly stepped forward, telling him to stop using this technique. If discovered by righteous cultivators, he would be sent directly to the Martial Arts Alliance. Fortunately, father was aware of this matter. At this moment, the boy asked, "Aren't you here to kill me?" You, the useless little girl. The first time she met the male lead, she was subjected to soul-searching questions. Looking at the boy who was asking so earnestly, Lien realized it was all the old fiend's doing. No wonder Yelu had such an obsession with her in her past life. It was simply because she was father's daughter, and the old fiend hated father the most. Just then, father, searching for Lien, also arrived at the door that I clearly told Deputy Shun that no one was allowed in here. Suddenly, his gaze focused on the withered flower on the table. His brow furrowed. "If what I saw just now wasn't you, my Lien, you would have already been taken away. Whether you believe me or not, there's nothing I can do. If you want to atone, I won't stop you." Afterwards, father carried Lien back to her room. He discussed his intention to keep the boy by his side, offering him a chance if he stopped using the demonic technique. Father also mentioned the risks of doing this that year. "This matter was deceitful because of me. I should be responsible." After several days of arduous and dangerous journeys, they finally found the village where the miracle healer lived. But things didn't go as planned. The village was already deserted. Only a few stabbed corpses remained. Based on the number of bodies, one adult and one child were missing. To ensure the miracle healer was still alive, Lien offered to search the surrounding area. After walking for a while, she discovered Yelu had been following her. Lien recalled that the miracle healer had a small child with him, about the same age as Yelu. During the landslide, the child was hiding nearby. Suddenly, Yelu's voice came from behind her. "Are you looking for this? There's a gap in these roots." Sure enough, they found a child in the tree hollow. He appeared to have had a fever for several days, but there were no doctors in the nearby villages. Then Lien remembered seeing some unburned herbs in a house. Enthusiastically, she went to find them. A while later, she returned with a bundle of herbs. She found Yelu was taking care of the child. Lien was quite shocked to see this scene. However, with her father absent, she still didn't know how to face Yelu. After all, he was the one who had killed her in her past life. Yelu unexpectedly started talking about his mother. Because she was often sick, he was the only one who took care of her. Lien was surprised that Yelu even had a mother. Suddenly realizing what she had said was inappropriate, she awkwardly explained that she didn't have a mother. She was gone before. Unexpectedly, Yelu comforted her, saying she still had her father. Perhaps without the influence of the demonic being, Yelu could be a kind person. At this moment, the child beside them opened his eyes. Just as Lien was about to explain the situation, the child grabbed her hand. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Lien patiently comforted the child, telling him not to worry. But suddenly, a loud rumble came from the sky. The entire valley began to shake. They immediately realized it was a landslide and started to flee. But at the last moment, she only had time to push the others in front of her. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself in a sealed cave. Her whole body ached faintly. She had thought they were close to finding the miracle healer. Unexpectedly, they encountered a landslide at the critical moment. Lien couldn't help but wonder if heaven was preventing her from getting treatment. Suddenly, she noticed her voice echoing. It seemed there was a man-made cavern within. Following the path, she saw light. Opening it, she discovered it was a medicine storehouse, and it was filled with high-quality internal cultivation medicines. Although she wanted to bring these to her father, escaping was the priority. Just as Lien was despairing, she heard a tapping sound. Was it her father coming to find her? Lien followed the sound, searching the room. She discovered the sound was coming from a cabinet. After finding the mechanism and opening it, she was stunned. A person was sitting inside. Having transmigrated into a useless girl with a destroyed dantian, she thought she could finally be healed. But a sudden landslide trapped her in a cave. Lien was terrified by the scene before her. She suddenly noticed the person's fingers were moving. He was alive. Lien cautiously asked if the person inside was all right. She immediately stood up in a panic, wanting to find medicine to treat him. But she heard the person behind her say it wasn't necessary. Not only that, but he also accurately said Lien's name. This shocked Lien even more. The man looked at Lien. Indeed, a girl with a destroyed dantian. Is everything all right up there? How is the village? Lien didn't know whether she should tell him that the people above were all gone. However, the man had already guessed most of it. But the child being alive was something the man hadn't expected. He didn't understand why Lien's father would abandon his daughter to save another child. Lien calmly explained that it wasn't that her father didn't want to, but that she had pushed the child to him. If I didn't do this, father would lose his other 2 children just to protect me. He's always been an upright and kind man. I can't make him face such a difficult choice. At this moment, the man suddenly began to cough violently. Lien anxiously called out to him, but he suddenly grabbed her shoulder. I heard you want to heal your dantian. I don't have much time left. The rest depends on your will. Several days later, people outside were still digging, but they had given up hope that Lien was still alive. Then they saw Yelu carrying someone approaching from a distance. Looking closer, it was the long-lost Lien. Trapped by the cave-in, Lien was finally rescued. Her eyes couldn't tolerate the light after being in darkness for so long. But Lien knew this wasn't the only reason. From that day on, she had 2 kinds of vision. She could see the light within people's bodies, and whenever she opened her eyes, tears would flow uncontrollably. This frightened everyone around her. Trapped in the cave-in for months, her eyes were still bad. Always a useless girl, she finally inherited the abilities of the divine Dr. Wan in the cave. After being rescued, she immediately went to the Nangong family. After her father witnessed the landslide, he returned to the Bailey family to request assistance. Yelu stayed behind. He hadn't expected to be the chosen one either. The girl falling into the valley to protect him was still vivid in his memory. He didn't understand why he was worth her risking her life. Everyone's life is precious, with no distinction of high or low. But the boy's expression remained gloomy. He said, "But my life isn't precious," with a matter-of-fact courage, as if stating a simple truth. Lien told the boy to come closer, then suddenly flicked him. Yelu recoiled in surprise. Lien looked at him seriously. "I didn't save you for you to say such depressing things. Don't ever say such infuriating things in front of someone who's come back from the dead." Yelu could only rub his face white sheep, ly. She didn't understand why Yelu had such thoughts. She crossed her arms, pretending to be angry. This Yelu was so different from the one in her memories. Suddenly, she was distracted by the commotion outside. She went out to see and found it was the child who had been with the divine Dr. Wan. Seeing Lien, He was about to rush over, but the guard stopped him. Lien, seeing the pitiful child, couldn't bear to leave him like that and let him run over and hug her. The hug lasted several minutes. Lien decided to have a good talk with the child. Although she didn't know why he was looking for her, he had the right to know about the divine Dr. Wan's death. But facing the crying child, Lien didn't know how to comfort him. She could only give him enough money to live on. And she tried to leave, but he grabbed her sleeve. Lien was taken aback by his action. At this moment, Yilu, who had been silently watching from behind, stepped forward and stopped the boy. You almost made her fall. Always a useless girl, finally awakened mysterious abilities, yet still unable to protect even a child. Facing the child who wanted to go with her, she ultimately had to leave him behind. In the vast martial arts world, even she, the eldest daughter, struggled to survive, let alone protect a powerless child. She didn't want to be responsible for anyone. Lien also told Yelu about her status in the family. I can't even protect a bird in my family. Although the Nangong family treats me well now, things will be very different when I return to the Bailey family. Elsewhere, Lien's father looked at the pond, his heart heavy. He remembered watching the fish in the water with Lien. His daughter had said that even carp have different personalities, but no one in this family cared. Even now, with Lien's fate unknown, everyone was discussing why she had to try so hard. No one in the family truly cared about her. Her father felt a deep sense of loss. Just then, a guard came running. Someone from the Nangong family is here. They said the young miss had been found. Her father was momentarily speechless with joy. At the same time, Lien arrived at the Nangong family. Nangong Wan excitedly picked up Lien. Then, realizing something about Lien's eyes, she gestured for Lien to try something. Lien, struggling in Nangong Wan's arms, said "4." She then apologized to her uncle, who looked displeased. With the sudden return of the girl, the weight on Nangong Wan's heart finally lifted. On the carriage, Lien recounted her escape from the cave. She also took out the medicine she had obtained from the medicine cave at divine Dr. Wan's place. Nangong Wan took the medicine with a puzzled look. Lien smiled, watching her uncle's reaction. Could this be that precious medicine? Divine Dr. Wan actually had two. Nangong Wan was overjoyed to hear that this bottle was for her uncle. Suddenly, she felt that since Lien had gone through so much trouble to get it, she couldn't easily accept such a precious gift. Faced with Nangong Wan's words, Lien felt touched, thinking that she was indeed worthy of being her father's friend. Something even martial artists would covet, she could easily give up. Nangong Wan hadn't expected Lien to be so magnanimous at such a young age. After a tiring journey, they finally arrived at the Nangong residence. Lien was looking forward to meeting the male protagonist of this world. She hadn't expected to bring the main antagonist along. She wondered if staying here for a month would cause any trouble. As soon as they got off the carriage, they saw Nangong's uncle's wife. So the male protagonist must be around. He was staying at his maternal grandfather's house, the Nangong residence. Nangong Wan was anxious to go and teach him a lesson. She had forgotten there was another child beside her. The little girl introduced herself as Xiao Yin from the Western Chamber sect. Lien hadn't expected the female protagonist to be here as well. It seemed the plot had changed compared to her previous life. People who shouldn't have appeared now were all present. And most importantly, the head of the Nangong family was also there. Yi Lu's matter could be hidden from Nangong Wan, but not from the old man. Lost in thought, Lien suddenly heard screams from outside. She went out to see Yi Lu grabbing Xiao Yin's hand. The two seemed to be arguing. Lien quickly stopped them. Yi Lu explained that Xiao Yin had been peeking through the window. Lien was about to greet the female protagonist when she suddenly kicked Yi Lu and ran away quickly. Lien could only warn Yi Lu not to do that again. He was a swordsman and couldn't injure his wrist. He was the daughter of the Western Chamber sex leader. Yi Lu looked bewildered. Just then, both of them were startled by someone who suddenly appeared. He was so fast that neither of them noticed him. Moreover, the light emanating from his dantian was the strongest Lien had ever seen. The man walked straight towards Yi Lu and said, "You have a big problem, child." Faced with the man's sudden attack, Lien panicked. She hurriedly tried to intervene, but the man immobilized her. She could see all of the man's movements, but strangely, her body wouldn't move. She had thought that reaching the Nangong residence meant safety, but unexpectedly, a supreme expert appeared and wanted to kill Yi Lu. Lien anxiously tried to help, but the old man immobilized her with a pressure point strike. She instantly felt as if her body was burning. Seeing this, the old man stopped attacking Yi Lu and quickly helped Lien. When she woke up again, she was in bed. However, the old man hadn't left. At least Yi Lu was all right. Lien stared at the old man, wondering if he had noticed Yi Lu's mushroom mother. The old man blamed Lien for not thanking him for saving her life. Choosing not to argue with a powerful figure, Lien thanked the old man and tried to ask his name. Unexpectedly, the old man told Lien to guess. Lien could only smile on the surface while inwardly scoffing. However, such a powerful person in the Nangong residence could only be the head of the Nangong family. Lien hurriedly got up and bowed respectfully. The old man was blunt, directly asking Lien to give him the cleansing body pill. Lien had a bad feeling. This was a difficult request for a child. Unexpectedly, the old man didn't care at all. After all, you stole it from Divine Dr. Wan, didn't you? Lien explained that she had Divine Dr. Wan's permission. Since all the skills have already been imparted, this statement, on the contrary, made the old man even angrier. Divine Dr. Wan actually gave it to you willingly. The unexpected anger startled Lien. Unexpectedly, the old man used Yi Lu's situation as further leverage, threatening, if you still want to resist, it will cost you your life. To protect herself and Yi Lu, Lien had to agree. But as a condition, she hoped the old man would keep this secret. If Yi Lu's demonic cultivation is discovered, you must also protect him. I don't want my father and the Nangong family to be harmed in any way. The old man looked at her, eyes gleaming. He would agree to any condition now. Just as the old man reached out his hand, Lien abruptly closed the curtain. It wasn't the head of the Nangong family. To protect the antagonist's safety, the girl didn't hesitate to negotiate with the demonic cultivator and even revealed the old man's identity, just so he would use his real name to guarantee Yi Lu's safety. Only then did the old man take the item and leave Xiao Sao Wai. After the old man left, Lien revealed a smile. Fortunately, she had purposely saved a bottle for herself. This way, she could give hers to her father. Unlike Lien's happiness, Yi Lu seemed utterly despondent. Thinking that it was all because of him that things had become like this, Lien comforted Yi Lu, telling him not to worry. That person is the wine-red demon. He's incredibly skilled in martial arts. To be able to come and go freely within the Nangong family, filled with experts, he must have the permission of the Nangong family head. He can only be the head's older brother. I can't believe he's still alive. Unexpectedly, Yi Lu had never heard of this person. He's a formidable figure in the martial arts world. If he wants something, even the gods couldn't stop him. This made Yi Lu even more dejected. Lien moved closer to Yi Lu's face. Your life was traded for with my hollow heart stone milk. You can't say your life is worthless. Yi Lu gratefully embraced her. The next day, Lien was invited by Madame Nangong to dine together. She hadn't expected that finding the antagonist would be the last step. Upon entering, she saw the head of the Nangong family sitting in the center. Judging by the color of his dantian, he was also a formidable expert. Lien politely greeted him. Madame Nangong introduced her son, Nangong Luqing, not the male lead. In her past life, she had only met him after her father's death. She hadn't expected to see him now. In her past life, based on the original story, Lien would fall in love with Lu Qing and do many bad things because of it. However, given the current situation, she definitely wouldn't fall for this impolite young Nangong Wan. Seeing this, he glared at her. But after they were seated, Xiao Yin's gaze never left Lien. Having unexpectedly transmigrated into the useless daughter of a martial arts family, she had a father whose name was renowned throughout the Jianghu. Even the little girl had long heard of her father's greatness. Learning that Lien was truly the great hero's daughter, the admiration in her eyes was evident. The girl then asked many more questions, completely ignoring Lu Qing sitting beside her. Besides this, the girl was also very curious about Yi Lu's identity. Lien hadn't expected Xiao Yan to ask this. Looking down, she suddenly noticed a bruise on her wrist. If Xiao Yan wanted to settle the score, she'd be finished. To protect Yi Lu, Lien could only immediately apologize to the female protagonist, hoping the matter would quickly be forgotten. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yan also repeatedly said she was sorry and explained that she had indeed been peeking from outside. Because they were all around the same age, she was curious. The window happened to be open, so she couldn't resist looking in. Lien hadn't expected Xiao Yan to be such a straightforward girl. Not only did she not complain about her injured wrist, but she also took the initiative to apologize and admit her mistake. The adults at the table laughed and commented on how easily children become close. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yin's next words were startling. "Are you really a useless person with no inner strength?" Nan Gongwan quickly changed the subject, asking Lien how her rest had been these past few days. It seemed he didn't know about the hollow heartstone milk being stolen. So, Lien simply talked about her training over the past few days. Lu Qing wasn't interested in their conversation. He stood up, excused himself to go cultivate, and left. Xiao Ling, also entranced by the prospect, called out to Lu Qing, who was walking ahead, and suggested they cultivate together. Now that they had a new friend, Lien was surprised when Lu Qing bluntly replied, "Who's friends with you?" Lien hadn't expected him to be so direct, his expression even showing impatience, because we're on different levels. Even Lien found this excessive. Remembering her father from her past life, she wondered how he could make such an arrogant person show any humanity. Xiao Ling was clearly hurt by the boy's words. Lien asked her why she was so insistent on cultivating with Lu Qing. "Because I want to get closer to him. He's really strong. I've never lost to anyone my age in the Watermoon sect." But Lu Qing defeated even older disciples. Lien couldn't help but think he does have the protagonist halo after all. But Xiao Ling will also become famous through her own strength in the future. So, it's best to change the subject for now. I heard the Watermoon sect swordsmanship is quite fierce. Xiao Ling immediately brightened at this. And my mom looks so cool when she wields a sword. Her expression then dimmed. She started to tear up, saying she wasn't strong enough yet. But upon hearing Lien's desire to see her sex swordsmanship, she immediately wiped her tears and pulled Lien towards the training grounds for a demonstration. Watching Xiao Ling wield her sword, Lien thought, her swordsmanship truly is exceptional among her peers. What was even more astonishing was what Lien's eyes were seeing. With each of Xiao Ling's moves, Lien's eyes predicted her next. It seems that being able to accurately see the old man's attacks last time wasn't a fluke. To see more clearly, Lien continuously encouraged Xiao Ling to repeat her movements. If I can observe this sword style, perhaps I can even help her. No one would have expected that the little girl, always considered useless, could one day instruct someone else in martial arts. To fully grasp Xiao Ling's technique, Lien coaxed her into repeating it numerous times. Finally, Xiao Ling collapsed on the ground, exhausted. Lien urged her to get up, but Xiao Ling simply lay there playfully. Seeing she was truly tired, Lien stopped persuading her and asked how long they would be staying at the Nangong estate. "My sister is a disciple of the Watermoon sect and loves it here because she can learn so much. So, she plans to stay for 2 more months. The Nangong estate truly is a good place for the Watermoon sect to cultivate. Don't feel too pressured. Your skills are much better than my twin cousins." But Xiao Ling still insisted Lien was only slightly better. So, Lien shared her observations. "Your swordsmanship has a weakness around your shoulder area." Xiao Ling was thrilled. This had always been her flaw. Lien then advised her on how to correct it. Xiao Ling, energized by the advice, was a stark contrast to her previous exhaustion. A while later, the two left the training grounds. Compared to Xiao Ling's energy, Lien was completely drained. Although it can't be fixed in a day, she has improved a lot. They agreed to continue the next day. Having just parted ways with Xiao Ling, Lien was approached by a Nangong servant. She learned the head of the family had invited her for tea. Lien was puzzled by the invitation. Through the screen, she sensed another presence hidden within. The head of the family exchanged a few pleasantries before using his internal energy to examine every part of Lien's body. Lien wondered if he had discovered anything about her condition. "That I heard you found the hollow heartstone milk at Master Wan's residence." Lien now understood. "Don't you feel bad about that?" "Of course I do, but I care more for my uncle. Besides, he's the one who took me to Master Wan, giving me the opportunity to obtain the hollow heartstone milk." Though Lien said this, it was also a choice made for self-preservation. As the only one to emerge from Master Wan's alchemy room, she would be under scrutiny. If all the hollow heartstone milk were with the Bai Li family, it would attract gossip from the martial union. Those at home would also covet it. It was better to share it with Uncle Nangong. Even the most vicious people wouldn't dare to cross two powerful families. The head of the family burst into laughter, praising Lian's father's good fortune. If only Nangong Wan could have such a lovely daughter. But regarding my sworn brother, I apologize. If you wish, I can have Nangong Wan return the stone milk to you. Lian knew that what the old man wanted was definitely hers, and he promised to protect Yi Lu's safety afterward. I used Grandpa's name. Even if I get it back, it'll just be stolen again. I've learned my lesson from this. But Grandpa, I have a request. I saw his martial arts research notes in Master Wan's alchemy room. Do you know anything about this? No one expected that the little girl who was always considered useless not only gained exceptional skills, but also a loyal protector. After asking the Nangong family head about Wu Gua, Lian walked back to her room alone. Meanwhile, Nangong Wan, hidden behind a screen, came out to question her father. What did he mean by saying Lian's hollow heartstone milk was snatched? I want to return it to her. But didn't you say you were going to give it to Lu Qing? Calm down and sit. Don't be so impulsive. Even a child can understand this. But you don't. Nangong Wan subconsciously retorted to her father. But she was met with a splash of tea. Even if you give it back to Lian now, she can't protect it. If someone else comes, it will be stolen again. Nangong Wan argued, in the Nangong family. Besides that old man, who else would dare? But the news of Lian coming out of Master Wan's alchemy room has already spread. So, anyone who knows about the hollow heartstone milk will make a move. If you really want to return it to her, wait until things calm down. Nangong Wan knew her friend wouldn't take it back. Lian also knew the danger of her current situation. The abilities she gained couldn't be easily revealed. Unexpectedly, as she walked forward, she saw Yi Lu guarding the door. Seeing Lian, he even greeted her with a smile. Lian was surprised. Have you been standing here ever since I left? You're not a puppy waiting for its owner. There's no need to wait here like this. Suddenly, she thought it might be because of their circumstances, just like her own situation in the Bai Li family. So, she asked him if he had eaten dinner. Yi Lu shook his head that I was afraid something would happen to you. I've been here the whole time. But who in the Nangong family would be so audacious? The next second, Yi Lu gave an example. Lian could only helplessly drag him to the kitchen to find something to eat. Early the next morning, as soon as Lian got up, she learned that Xiao Lin had come. He said you wanted to see him, Lian. But he left after confirming you were still asleep. He came in suddenly, and I couldn't stop him, but I could catch him. Lian remembered she had indeed promised this last night. Then she saw Yi Lu hand her medicine. Unable to make excuses, she obediently drank it. After giving instructions that Yi Lu didn't need to wait for her all day, Lian went out. She unexpectedly saw an ivory white shimmer behind the wall. She discovered it was Lu Qing and his mother. Her gossiping nature kicked in. This was a perfect opportunity to practice her newly learned skill of absorbing surrounding energy to enhance her hearing. Instantly, she heard their conversation and discovered Lu Qing was being scolded by his mother. The girl, upon her first display of power, gained a little admirer. After eavesdropping on their conversation, Lian discovered Lu Qing was being scolded because of Xiao Lin. Madame Nangong wanted her son to apologize because his behavior had made his father want to confine him to the ancestral hall. However, Lian didn't care about this matter and stopped eavesdropping. Just then, Xiao Lin came running over. She hugged Lian, who was on her way to the training grounds, and introduced her to the people from the Watermoon sect. This is my friend, Lian. Lian then realized how many people from the Watermoon sect had arrived. Only Xiao Lin was younger. The others were already adolescent cultivators. She quickly introduced herself as a member of the Bai Li family, feeling apprehensive inside. She feared they would be like other unfriendly people, full of disdain and mockery, considering her a burden to the Bai Li family. But surprisingly, the Watermoon sect members were very friendly. They even praised her, saying she was even cuter than Xiao Lin had described. Xiao Lin, thank you for taking care of her these past few days. Hearing this, Xiao Lin shyly protested, while Lian was deeply touched. Everyone was much kinder than she had imagined. Afterward, Xiao Lin boasted about how she would be able to practice with Lu Qing for half an hour every day from now on. This reminded Lian of the earlier incident. Perhaps it wasn't a good thing for Lu Qing. Then, Xiao Lin enthusiastically pulled Lian towards the training grounds. Lu Qing was already training there and didn't seem to be in good spirits. The clueless Xiao Lin cheerfully greeted her. In the following sparring practice, Xiao Lin was repeatedly sent flying. Lu Qing showed no mercy, making her pick herself up again and again. This had already happened more than 10 times. It was obvious Lu Qing was deliberately trying to crush Xiao Lin's self-esteem. Then, Lu Qing suddenly lashed out again. What happened today? You can go tell my mother that I bullied you again. Innocent Xiaolin had no idea what he was talking about. Stop playing dumb. Don't you know what I'm talking about? Xiaolin explained that she hadn't done anything. But Lu Qing still wouldn't listen and intended to continue. Lien, unable to stand by and watch, stepped in to stop him. I think you've misunderstood something, young Master Nangong. She then called over the two maids who were standing to the side and asked who had seen Madame Nangong yesterday. The maids immediately indicated they had seen her. Yesterday, she called me over and asked about you and Miss Xiaolin. Lu Qing then realized he had wrongly accused Xiaolin. And she told you not to take your anger out on Xiaolin. You probably didn't expect the maids to report back to your mother. Since it's a misunderstanding, you should apologize to her. After a moment of silence, Lu Qing turned and left, leaving Lien and Xiaolin standing there. Well, at least one problem is solved today. Suddenly, Xiaolin grabbed Lien's hand, her face full of admiration. You were so cool. To protect this naive girl beside her, Lien decided to stop hiding and use her skills to help Xiaolin. After the matter was cleared up, Xiaolin excitedly wanted to see Lien's room. But my room is just like all the other guest rooms. And Yilu said you already went there this morning. Then, Lien noticed the bruises on Xiaolin's hands and changed her mind. She decided to take Xiaolin to her room to treat her wounds. As soon as they reached the door, they saw Yilu waiting there, his gaze fixed on Xiaolin behind Lien. The two began a silent staring contest. Lien finally persuaded Yilu to let her take Xiaolin inside. Lien then removed the thin veil she always wore, preparing to treat Xiaolin. Xiaolin seemed quite reluctant, but Lien had to act before the maids noticed. First, Yilu pinched me the other day, and now I got hurt during practice today. Xiaolin then curiously asked how Lien knew the maids had reported what happened. We were together yesterday and today, so it definitely wasn't you. It must have been someone who was with us yesterday. Xiaolin suddenly understood, praising Lien for her cleverness. But then she became sad. Why wouldn't Lu Qing believe me? Because he thinks we're not on the same level. Seeing how upset Xiaolin was, Lien decided to help her. I saw his weakness during training today. When Lu Qing uses a certain move, his defense has a flaw. If you attack there, you'll definitely win. Hearing this, Xiaolin was immediately intrigued and pestered Lien to tell her more. Lien convinced her to wait until after her injuries were treated. I can use what I saw in Master Wan's alchemy room. Saying this, Lien channeled her energy into Xiaolin. This action caused both of them to gasp in surprise, even startling Lien. Xiaolin excitedly exclaimed, "Your eyes turned gold." Lien then remembered Master Wan's eyes. "Who are you?" Xiaolin, seeing Lien's surprise, immediately pointed at Yi Lu for confirmation. Unexpectedly, Yi Lu denied it. Fortunately, Xiaolin was easily distracted and quickly forgot, preventing Lien's secret from being revealed. After several days of training, Lien's ability to control her energy had improved. However, every time she practiced, she would experience headaches. And when the surrounding energy flowed according to her will, her eyes would turn gold. Lost in thought, she saw Lu Qing standing in the corridor ahead. Long time no see. "Are you out for a walk too?" She'd heard he'd been confined for bullying Xiaolin, and now his gaze was sharp. It seemed she was thoroughly disliked after that incident. The current situation was completely different from her past life. In her past life, Lu Qing had been very kind. It was Lien who, knowing the future, had avoided him. His personality was also completely different. So, she turned and decided to leave. But Lu Qing called out to her. Yet he didn't say anything, looking like he wanted to speak, but hesitated. Then he turned and left. Yi Lu, standing nearby, quickly complained, "What a rude guy." A few days later, Lu Qing, emerging from the ancestral hall, began sparring with Xiaolin again. Before starting, he seemed full of confidence. Once the match began, he still seemed quite nervous. However, this time, if Xiaolin won, it would also indirectly prove how powerful her abilities were. Show him what you're made of. The girl displayed her strength for the first time. She caught a flying wooden sword barehanded, successfully saving a maid. Lien, watching their duel from the side, suddenly noticed that Lu Qing's sparring style had changed. Although he had told Xiaolin about his weaknesses, it was only limited to minor flaws in basic moves. Previously, Lu Qing would always use the same move. This time, however, he was seriously switching between different techniques. This made Xiaolin exceptionally excited. Until Lu Qing used one of the basic moves they often practiced, Xiaolin without thinking, charged straight at him. Seeing her movement, Lien knew it was extremely dangerous. Even though it was a wooden sword, it was aimed directly at Lu Qing's neck. But the expected disastrous scene didn't happen. The wooden sword was actually deflected by Lu Qing using sword chi. She hadn't expected him, at such a young age, to possess such skill. However, the most pressing issue now was that the broken wooden sword was flying straight towards her. Thanks to her recent training, she could clearly see the sword's trajectory. She thought she just needed to dodge slightly, but then she suddenly saw the maid behind her. So, without hesitation, she reached out and caught the wooden sword. Everyone present was stunned by this scene. Even Lien herself couldn't believe it. Hearing the news of Lien's injury, Madame Nangong rushed over immediately, asking the doctor how she got hurt. Learning that although it was a wooden sword, the wound looked like it was caused by a real blade, Lien, looking at Madame Nangong's expression, guessed that she might have also realized Lu Qing had used sword chi. As expected, the main character is a monster. Even his father, who was known as a genius, only managed to use sword chi at the age of 12. But Master Nangong didn't seem pleased. After all, Lu Qing used a wooden sword to unleash sword chi. A wooden sword isn't strong enough to handle internal energy. Fortunately, the wooden sword didn't explode. It only cut her hand. Madame Nangong kept asking the doctor if Lien's hand would heal. Hearing that internal energy assistance was needed, and seeing that the doctor was about to reveal that Lien had no internal energy, Madame Nangong abruptly interrupted him. Having someone help circulate her chi will prevent any lasting effects. Lien was touched. Although she was used to hearing people call her internally crippled, she was still happy to know someone was defending her. When she woke up again after the treatment, she was in her own room. Yi Lu was there, having been watching over her. Seeing Lien wake up, he simply said, "You can't move your hand." Lien then remembered she was injured. But why was Yi Lu holding her wrist? The rescued maid provided the answer the next moment. It turned out she had been asleep for a whole day, and because of the pain, her hand kept moving. To prevent Lien from moving, Yi Lu had held her wrist all night. The loyal puppy had stayed by the girl's side all night, just so she wouldn't move in her sleep. The next moment, the maid knelt down to thank Lien for saving her life. Lien felt embarrassed and asked the maid to inform the doctor. At that moment, Yi Lu walked to the bedside with medicine. It was time for her daily dose. After taking the medicine, she learned that Lu Qing had brought her back last night. "I heard Xiaolin tell me everything that happened." Lien was surprised. They barely spoke to each other before. "You must be tired after watching over me all night. Go get some rest." Suddenly, a servant came to report. "Young master." Lien saw Lu Qing lift the curtain, his face covered in bruises, which startled her. The atmosphere between the two boys was tense. To prevent a fight, Lien quickly urged Yi Lu to go rest. In the end, the puppy couldn't refuse Lien and left dejectedly. The atmosphere between Lien and Lu Qing was very awkward. Lien was speechless. Why was he here? He wasn't saying anything, so she tried to make conversation by asking how his hand got injured. But Lu Qing just said, "It's none of your business." This made Lien even more speechless. She didn't know why he had come. But judging by the injury on his face, it was definitely Uncle Nangong's doing. She asked him if it hurt. Don't make Lu Qing even angrier. "You shouldn't be worrying about this right now." His gaze was fixed on Lien's injured hand. Lien was internally screaming, "What is he doing?" Then she heard Lu Qing softly ask, "Is your hand all right? I heard that if something goes wrong, there could be lasting effects." Lien finally understood the real reason for Lu Qing's visit. He was worried about her injury. Lien realized that beneath his arrogant facade, there was a sweet side. If he knew she was finding him endearing, he'd definitely get angry again. She quickly changed the subject. "If you're here to check on me, I'm fine." Suddenly, Lu Qing shyly looked away. "I'll help you until your hand heals." Lien was stunned. Those words couldn't possibly have come from Lu Qing. It seemed he wanted to reconcile. Thinking of Yi Lu's situation, they were rivals in her past life, and now they also disliked each other. She had to refuse Lu Qing's offer and "I'll be uncomfortable with you here. And this whole time, you haven't shown any interest in me at all. I barely even register on your radar. How can I accept your help?" I appreciate the thought, though. After saying this, she felt the relationship with Lu Qing about to shatter. But then Lu Qing suddenly exclaimed, "Then let's get to know each other better." The female lead had been completely captivated by Lien. After Lu Qing's offer to help Lien was rejected, he suggested getting to know each other better. This surprised Lien. She knew Lu Qing must be feeling guilty. Did you apologize to Xiaolin? Physical wounds aren't the only kind of hurt. He's been emotionally hurt this whole time. Remember what you said to him after dinner that day? That was the third time I'd met him, and you humiliated him right in front of me. And that was also the first time we met. Surely, Lu Qing, coming from a noble family, would understand. As expected, Lu Qing blushed after hearing this. The next moment, he was about to leave, but he hesitated at the door. Lien then noticed that Yi Lu hadn't gone to rest. He was waiting at the door. Seeing Lu Qing come out, he said smugly, "I'll take care of Lien, young master. You don't need to trouble yourself." Lien quickly called Yi Lu to her side. Lu Qing was already angry. Why was Yi Lu adding fuel to the fire? Fortunately, Lu Qing didn't argue and just left. "Yi Lu, why did you provoke Lu Qing?" "Because I don't like him." Lien wanted to scold him further, but then she suddenly thought, how is her situation any different from Yi Lu's? Someone finally wanted to be her friend, and here she was, acting like an adult bullying a child. She felt bad. Yi Lu saw the distressed look on Lien's face and quickly apologized that I won't do it again. It was my fault. I won't force you to get along with him. Just don't be difficult. Early the next morning, Xiaolin came looking for her. I heard you told Lu Qing to come find me. Lien was startled by Xiaolin's sudden appearance. He suddenly came to apologize. I thought he'd gone mad. Lien then remembered what she'd said. The next moment, she heard Xiaolin say, "You can have Lu Qing. I'm not interested in him anymore. He's just a guy who likes to swing sword around." Lien couldn't help but retort, "You said before that he was strong and handsome." Immediately, Xiaolin put on a look of adoration. "That's because I think you're more handsome." Me? Lien was incredulous. She wasn't the female lead of the novel. Xiaolin should be with the male lead, Lu Qing. "You protected my maid." Mother said, "Truly handsome people protect the weak." And the way you grabbed that wooden sword, it was really cool. You're also really smart. You could shut Lu Qing down with just a few words. You even told me the weaknesses in his swordsmanship and made him apologize to me. Anyway, I hate him now and don't need him. So you can have him. While Xiaolin was rambling on, she completely failed to notice Lu Qing standing right behind her. He was still puzzled, asking why the maid wasn't moving. He only realized Lien was behind him when she spoke. Xiaolin quickly dodged behind Lien. "You said you hated me." Xiaolin was extremely embarrassed, having been caught red-handed talking behind someone's back. But Lien said she didn't need anyone's approval. This angered Xiaolin that I don't need your approval either. Lien's relationship with Lu Qing finally eased somewhat. Unknowingly, winter arrived while she was staying at the Nangong residence. Yi Lu also began learning to write under Lien's guidance. Looking at the boy with the vacant expression, Lien told him he didn't need to watch over her while she slept anymore. Recently, because of her hand injury, both the maid and Yi Lu were severely sleep-deprived. But even so, he refused that, "If you're worried, just tie my wrist and I won't be able to move around." Unexpectedly, Yi Lu said Lien had a bad sleeping habit of frequently rolling around in bed. Lien didn't believe him at first, but seeing Yi Lu's expression, she realized he wasn't joking. She suddenly remembered acting spoiled and sleeping with her father. Just then, Lu Qing entered the room and saw the table full of medicine. He asked Lien if she needed someone to help apply it, but that wasn't important now. Despite her previous refusal, she still couldn't get Lu Qing to leave. However, Yi Lu and Lu Qing still completely ignored each other. But this was a good opportunity to let Yi Lu rest during the day, so they wouldn't spend too much time together. "What were you and Yi Lu doing just now?" Lien said she was teaching Yi Lu to read. Unexpectedly, Lu Qing asked, "What is he to you?" Lien didn't understand what he meant by that. She really didn't know how to define her relationship with Yi Lu. Seeing Lien's silence, Lu Qing angrily turned his head and said, "Fine, don't tell me if you don't want to. I'm going somewhere today." A moment later, the two arrived at the Nangong family's library. Lien was in a great mood. She hadn't seen so many trees in a long time. However, she couldn't let anyone in the Nangong family know she could read, so she hadn't visited the library before. Seeing Lien's happiness, Lu Qing asked why she hadn't asked her father for access earlier. Lien explained that she had only recently learned to read. If she had asked to come to the library, her uncle would have found it strange. That was why she had asked Lu Qing to accompany her. The adults would naturally assume Lu Qing was reading to her. Lu Qing asked again, "You only recently started learning to read." Seeing his puzzled expression, she knew he was wondering why a child from a noble family would start learning to read so late. So, do you want me to read to you? What book do you want to read? Lien was surprised Lu Qing hadn't pressed further. You don't have to help me. I'll tell you a secret. Actually, I'm a genius. I can read even without learning. Lu Qing was stunned, feeling like he had just been thoroughly tricked by Lien. But faced with her injured hand, he couldn't do anything. In the end, he resigned himself to fetching a large pile of books for her. I still need to keep the fact that I can read secret. Although Lu Qing was proud, he promised not to tell. Even though your reputation isn't great, you're definitely someone who keeps their word. The usually aloof boy also had a shy side. Lien's praise made him blush instantly. Looking at his flushed cheeks, Lien found him adorable and even wanted to reach out and pinch them. However, Lu Qing dodged her. Lien then continued reading, but she noticed the boy beside her kept spacing out. Are you tired? You keep zoning out. Lu Qing said he was fine. If you have any worries, you can tell me. Maybe I can help. But Lu Qing asked, did you teach Xiaolin that move last time? Lien remembered that he had been behind them and had heard everything. She admitted to teaching Xiaolin. But how did you do it? You can't cultivate. I can see. Lu Qing was shocked. Just as he was about to ask something, Nan Gongwan suddenly entered. The two of them hadn't expected them to come and had been investigating the death of Physician Wan. The deputy official, Nan Gongwan, abruptly interrupted their drinking, asking Lien why she still hadn't treated her hand. Lien then realized it was late. You didn't come, so I went to look for you and found you weren't at your residence. By the way, how did you two end up together? Lu Qing, you haven't caused trouble and bullied Lien again, have you? But no matter how she asked, Lu Qing wouldn't say a word. Lien then shielded him, explaining, no, he came to help me. He didn't bully me. After saying this, she nudged the boy beside her, but it's all true. Why aren't you saying anything? She then saw Lu Qing's face turn even redder. Even my own father finds this suffocating. No wonder you haven't been to your afternoon classes recently. I was wondering what you were up to. You've been weighted on hand and foot like a young master your whole life. How can you possibly take care of anyone? I'll send someone to look after Lien. You just stay out of trouble. These words caused Lien's displeasure. He was apologizing in his own way. How can you say that, uncle? Nan Gongwan hadn't expected Lien to start defending her son after only a few days together. A moment later, they took Lien to the physician. After the examination, it was determined that there was feeling in her palm. As long as she spent a few days at the Sangxiong Pavilion, she would recover. Lu Qing was quite agitated upon hearing this, that you're actually letting her go to the Sangxiong Pavilion. The so-called Sangxiong Pavilion was the Nangong family's cultivation grounds. Cultivating there could rapidly increase one's power. Unlike other families, the Sangxiong Pavilion was built using a mystical formation. Nangong Wan explained, a suitable amount of time inside for treatment can enhance the healing effects. However, the Sangxiong Pavilion can only be entered alone, and the door only opens once every 15 days. Once inside, you have to wait 15 days before you can leave. Lien, are you willing to go in? Lien was delighted after hearing this. She just happened to need a place to practice her scriptures, so she immediately agreed to Nangong Wan's proposal. However, Lu Qing also wanted to go, but was refused. The scene became quite awkward for a moment. Lien curiously asked why Lu Qing couldn't go. Because he's too greedy. During cultivation, essence, energy, and spirit must be kept in balance. He doesn't yet possess the necessary comprehension. If he's too greedy, it will disrupt the balance. Don't worry about other people's matters right now. Hurry back and get ready. Lu Qing then left with Lien. Meanwhile, the deputy official's investigation had also progressed. He had found out who attacked Bagua village. The man couldn't believe that his son would carry a young girl on his back. The deputy official investigated and found that the culprits who destroyed Bagua village were assassins from the Ghost Guard sect. He asked Nangong Wan if she should send men to pursue the Ghost Guard sect. I learned that this sect was destroyed not long ago. I can't make a judgment on this matter. I'd better tell my father first. At this moment, Nangong Wan suddenly glanced at the two figures outside the window and was instantly dumbfounded. Lu Qing was carrying Lien on his back. What's wrong with my son? Elsewhere, a white-haired man sat in a chair. It seems the Martial Arts Alliance has noticed something. The person kneeling below reported on the Ghost Guard sect's destruction, sweating profusely. The white-haired man's simple rhetorical question made the person below break out in a cold sweat. It doesn't matter if the Martial Arts Alliance knows. I'm curious what they can find out. However, I heard that the Nangong family will investigate with the Martial Arts Alliance. What do you think we should do? Then let that person deal with the investigation team. That person from the Bailey family is greedy and foolish. A little instigation will suffice. At this time, another person reported the Zhuge family is making moves against the Nangong family. The man mused, could it be that physician one also offended the Zhuge family head? Is the seeker this time Bailey Lian? Then, when the poison in Bailey Igong's body spreads to 80%, we'll retrieve the seed sown in the Bailey family. It seems that soon the world will be mine. Go prepare a gift for the seeker. The day for Lian to enter the Sangqiong Pavilion arrived before they knew it. Before leaving, she reminded Yi Lu to stay in the courtyard. However, Yi Lu kept replying with which caused Lian's dissatisfaction. She then chuckled mischievously, and Yi Lu immediately brushed aside his bangs. Lian was instantly speechless. She remembered when she first met Yi Lu, he was so thin. Now he had gained some weight. He was just right for warming her hands in the winter. Yi Lu promised to wait obediently for Lian's return. Just now, I thought she was a child. Now, she suddenly seems like a puppy. Do you like puppies? After hearing an affirmative reply, Yi Lu revealed a satisfied smirk. When Xiaolin went in, Madame was still very worried about Nangong Wan. She thought it was only for 15 days. Lu Qing had stayed inside for a year when he was 7. Lian quickly comforted Madame, saying she would be fine. If this continued, her bag would soon be overflowing. But Madame still gave countless instructions, fearing for Lian's safety. Lian took one last look at the distant woods. In the end, Lu Qing didn't come to see her off, so she had to go in alone. The two women finally parted ways again. Lian entered the Sangqiong Pavilion alone. The scene inside was quite different from what she had imagined. Although she had long heard that the pavilion used intricate formations, the experience was still quite shocking. However, everything before her eyes couldn't fool the golden eyes. After sitting down, Lian tried to gather the surrounding natural energy. After a while, she checked. There's only a tiny bit, and it dissipated instantly. Although it wasn't comparable to Lu Qing's, her spirit was still exceptional in comparison. Now, she still needed to find a way to prolong the use of her eyes. However, compared to before, there was still some progress. It was a skill that could gradually improve with cultivation. Currently, the cause of her father's death was still unknown. She could only do what she could, striving to increase the natural energy within her body and doing everything in her power. 22 days passed just like that, because Nangong Wan's uncle had said she could stay as long as she needed. Now the injury on her hand was almost healed. After leaving, she couldn't spar with Lu Qing anymore. Lian then walked out of the Sangqiong Pavilion. Unexpectedly, it was night outside. She was wondering how to get back to her residence when she saw her father standing ahead. Bailey Igong, who hadn't seen his daughter for a long time, quickly embraced her. Lian smelled the medicinal fragrance on her father's clothes and felt his strong, warm embrace. It felt very real. This was the first time Lian had cried and vented her emotions since she was born. Her father just let her cling to him. This made Nangong Wan anxious. If Lian had come out any later, he feared she would break down the Sangqiong Pavilion's door. Lian complained. Uncle clearly said I could stay longer if needed. Nangong Wan then remembered he had completely forgotten about it. From your conversation just now, Lian clearly didn't know I was coming. I sent a carrier pigeon with a message beforehand. I thought you knew. However, Nangong Wan's reply made the two of them even more touched. I wanted Lian to heal properly inside, and she would be surprised to see her father upon leaving. I didn't tell her because I wanted to surprise her. Who knew she would come out so late? Her father comforted Lian, saying she had trained herself inside and was very capable. Seeing their joyful reunion, Nangong Wan couldn't stay any longer and made an excuse to leave. As soon as Nangong Wan left, Lian looked seriously at her father. I have something to show you. The girl's first display of power shocked her genius father. He stared at his daughter's golden pupils. He couldn't help but worry. How did your eyes become like this? So Yin told her father everything that happened after they separated. Physician Wan gave me the golden eyes before he died. Now I can not only absorb natural energy, but also see everyone's meridians. Such a miraculous thing, even her father had never heard of. But he was grateful that it could help his daughter recover and gain an ability similar to inner strength. Lian was moved by her father's understanding. But we need to keep this a secret for now. What if everyone knows I can cultivate and has unrealistic expectations? Lien had been burdened with worries ever since she couldn't cultivate. Everyone called her a waste. They even gossiped about her father. What if they know I can cultivate again, but I don't achieve anything? Then I'll become the target of everyone's bullying again. Thinking of this, Lien couldn't help but tremble. She didn't have the confidence to go through that again. Her father hugged Lien, his heart aching. So, can you see my meridians now too? Lien discovered her father also had inner meridians similar to Nangong Wan's, but the color was vastly different. Her father's inner meridians were a white tinged with blue light, mesmerizing to look at. But no cultivator would appreciate having their body and inner power seen through. Lien realized it was rude to stare and quickly apologized. I won't look at you anymore, father. No, it's not that. I was just a little surprised. After all, you possess an unknown ability. Her father pondered for a moment that I think I should tell Nangong Wan about this. The Nangong family understands these things better. Maybe they know about this ability. Lien readily agreed. The people we most want to keep this from are the Bailey family. If this will put your mind at ease, father, then it's fine. Lien suddenly thought of something and excitedly shouted, Father, father, I have something else to show you. She asked her father to take her back to her residence. But as soon as they arrived, something felt amiss. There was an unexpected guest at her residence. This is my daughter's residence. Old man, who are you? So, you must be Bailey Yigong. Lien, however, recognized the color of the intruder's inner meridians and immediately warned her father. He's the Flame Emperor of Tianshan. As the strange old man emerged from the shadows, they saw Yi Lu dangling from his hand. That I wasn't planning on showing myself, but this idiot messed things up, so I had to step in. What are you doing in my daughter's residence? Lien asked, fearing her father might fight the old man. Fortunately, the Flame Emperor stated plainly he wasn't there to fight, that we need to talk about this child. Candlelight flickered in the night. In the room, on the sandalwood table, wisps of white mist curled from porcelain teacups. Bailey Yigong's gaze shifted between the Flame Emperor and the two children. The Flame Emperor abruptly grabbed a teacup. The amber tea gurgled as he drank, his rough voice causing the bamboo blinds to sway. I'll get straight to the point. His cloudy eyes glinted. He pointed a gnarled finger at Yi Lu. Give me this child, because I want to take him as my disciple. Bailey Yigong stared intently at the Flame Emperor. Flame Emperor, Senior. You are one of the 11 strongest in the world. Becoming your disciple is an incredible opportunity, but your proposal is so sudden. May I ask what you see in this child? The Flame Emperor leaned back in his chair and sneered, his tone filled with unquestionable arrogance. You needn't worry. I already know this child's situation. Bailey Gong was still confused. Yi Lu, looking apprehensive, quickly turned to Lien. Haven't you told him the truth yet? He seems unaware. Lien bit her lip, guilt evident in her voice. I was planning to tell father after we returned to the residence. Bailey Yigong sighed heavily, a mixture of resignation and understanding in his voice. Since you know, then it's easier to explain. Yi Lu has practiced demonic cultivation, so he can no longer learn other martial arts. Demonic cultivation is very unique. Unlike righteous cultivation techniques, once someone learns a demonic cultivation technique, they can't learn any other techniques. Forcing it will only lead to chi deviation and death. Moreover, what Yi Lu learned is the infamous Shi Xian demonic art. Hearing this, the Flame Emperor scoffed dismissively, his eyes filled with confidence. Even if he has mastered the Shi Xian demonic art, it won't be a problem for him to inherit my martial arts. In fact, he should inherit my martial arts. Bailey Yigong tentatively asked, Senior, do you mean your martial arts can suppress demonic cultivation? The Flame Emperor answered decisively, precisely. If he can master my 9 fires purgatory scripture. Lien's mind reeled. No way. He's actually making such a generous offer. Hearing the Flame Emperor's words, this seemed like a godsend, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Bailey Yigong was equally incredulous. Such an opportunity is simply unbelievable. The Flame Emperor impatiently urged, what would I gain by lying? This requires no further consideration. You should agree immediately. For a moment, all three fell silent. Finally, Lien broke the silence. Shouldn't we ask Yi Lu's opinion? What he wants is what matters most, isn't it? Although, no one would be foolish enough to pass up such an opportunity. But before she could finish, the Flame Emperor interrupted her rudely and no need to ask. But just then, Yilu suddenly spoke. His voice, though childish, was incredibly firm. He said he didn't want to. Bailey Yigong's face was filled with astonishment. Did you really refuse? Lien quickly followed up. Why, Yilu? Yilu's eyes were clear and resolute. I like it here. The Flame Emperor of Tianshan hadn't expected this outcome. Annoyed, he scoffed. Bailey Yigong looked at the Flame Emperor, his tone apologetic. Senior, he has given his answer. The Flame Emperor, however, was unhurried. A cunning glint flashed in his eyes. Have you heard of the Jiang Constitution? Lien furrowed her brow, pondering for a moment before saying, Isn't that a rare and incurable disease? One's qi is normally harmonious, divided into yin and yang. But the Jiang Constitution refers to a physique with extremely vigorous yang qi. The Flame Emperor clasped his hands slightly. Incurable disease. That's right. Those born with this constitution have extremely vigorous yang qi from birth. And as they grow, this vigorous yang qi will gradually cause all the blood vessels in their body to dry up. In mild cases, they will die by the age of 15. In severe cases, they won't live past 20. They will die prematurely in the agony of being burned alive. And this child has the Jiang Constitution. His words hung in the air, plunging the room back into silence. Lien dug her fingernails deep in her palms, a chilling sensation creeping up her spine. That means if this continues, Yilu might not live past 15. At the latest, he'll die before he's 20. She suddenly remembered something. Wait a minute. But Yilu in the original story lived past 20. Lien blurted out, Sir, you must have a reason for telling us this, right? The Flame Emperor stroked his white beard, a cunning glint in his eyes. Indeed, there are two ways to solve this problem. The taut nerves suddenly relaxed. Lien breathed a sigh of relief. There are two ways. The old man suddenly leaned forward, the candlelight casting sinister shadows on his face. The first is a Shi exandemonic art. His raspy voice echoed in the silence. He should have succumbed to its effects long ago, but he's still safe and sound. It's because he's practicing the Shi exandemonic art. He instinctively craves the yin qi of others. This prolongs his life. The second is yang attribute cultivation, learning martial arts that temper yang qi to its extreme, thereby controlling it, is also effective. If one can control yang qi, the Jiang Constitution will instead become the strongest physique, allowing one to achieve unparalleled accomplishments. His voice suddenly dropped, laced with a tempting tone. Indeed, my 9 fires purgatory scripture is a martial art that can control yang qi. So, let this child become my disciple. If you don't intend to watch him die, you'd better agree. The evening breeze of early spring, carrying begonia petals, swept across the bluestone path. Lien's grip on her skirt tightened. What? The Flame Emperor proposed you become his disciple a month ago? Why didn't you tell me? Yilu stared down at the dappled shadows on the ground, his throat bobbing nervously. The day the Flame Emperor came, I was going to tell you. But that day, your hand was injured. So, I forgot to mention it. How's your hand? Is it healed? Lien brushed away his reaching hand. Don't worry about it. You said you forgot. Yilu's voice grew quieter, his toes unconsciously grinding against the gravel. I thought after I refused him, the matter was over. And then? Was today the first time he came to find you again? No. After you went to the Sanxiong Pavilion, he came every day. Yilu suddenly asked, Can I see your hand? Lien exasperatedly slapped her forehead, but still obediently extended her hand, allowing the boy to hold and examine it. Feeling the warmth from her palm, he asked, Is it really all right now? Doesn't it hurt anymore? Lien's temper flared. Is now the time to worry about my hand? She suddenly lowered her voice, her expression grave. The Flame Emperor said that Yilu is currently safe thanks to the Shi Exine demonic art. But right now, Yilu's body is like a dam with cracks. If the cracks widen and the dam water starts to leak, his body will deteriorate rapidly and irreversibly. She bit her lip, and if his pain becomes unbearable, he will instinctively resort to the Shi Exine demonic art. Yilu's hand froze in midair. The moonlight illuminated the dark circles under his eyes. But what? Will Hero Bailey let me leave? Lien stared intently at Yilu, her eyes filled with confusion and unease. Yilu, however, remained calm. Lien bit her lip, her heart churning with turbulent emotions. Yi Lu's reaction was definitely not normal. Even after learning that he would die young if things continued this way, he seemed indifferent. How could this be considered a normal reaction? Lien clutched her skirt, her voice involuntarily rising. This concerns your life or death, so father should let you go. Her words abruptly stopped. Lien was filled with confusion. He had painstakingly learned the Shi'an demonic art to survive. Why did he now act as if he didn't care about life or death? So, Lien added, if you really don't want to go, you need to come up with a reason to convince father. Yi Lu lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. He softly said, I know a reason to convince him. I'll go find him. With that, he turned to leave. Wait a minute. Lien hurriedly called out to Yi Lu. Are you really going to refuse? This is a really good opportunity. Yi Lu slowly turned his head and asked, are you worried about me? Lien's eyes reddened with anxiety as she shouted, is that even a question? If you miss this opportunity now, Yi Lu said gently, it's all right. Moonlight bathed Yi Lu's cheeks in a soft glow. A faint smile touched his lips. Lien was silenced by the young man's gentle smile. That clean, pure smile, as if possessing a calming power, stopped the persuasion on the tip of her tongue. It all turned into a silent sigh. Yi Lu turned and stepped into the night. Lien watched his receding figure, a pang of sorrow in her heart. She stood rooted to the spot, murmuring to herself, will I understand this child someday? Yi Lu's footsteps had just faded into the moon shadows. When the Flame Emperor of Tianshan emerged from the shadows of the Taihu stones, he slowly approached. Preposterous boy, how dare you make an old man wait for you? If this weren't the Nangong estate, I wouldn't put up with this. Lien stepped forward and said, I have something I want to ask you, but it's not convenient to ask in front of my father. I heard 2 different meanings in your words. Please tell me if I'm right. The Flame Emperor raised an eyebrow. Point 2 meanings? Tell me about it. The young woman's gaze was sharp. First, you told us Yi Lu has a Jiang constitution, meaning if we want to save him, we need to convince him together, right? The Flame Emperor stroked his beard, a sneer escaping his lips. Correct. The young woman took half a step forward. The moonlight cast her shadow over the old man. And the only person who can learn your martial arts is Yi Lu, right? The Flame Emperor let out a derisive laugh. How absurd. I thought you were going to say something insightful. Turns out it's just nonsense. Lien interrupted him. It's clearly not. Is there a connection between you and him? Why do you care for him so much? Think about it the other way around. Isn't that what it means? You have no relation to Yi Lu, so why would you teach him martial arts to save him? If you think about it in reverse, it makes sense. If only someone with a Jiang constitution can learn the 9 fires purgatory scripture. The Flame Emperor's laughter abruptly ceased. His Adam's apple bobbed beneath his loose skin. He forced the words out through gritted teeth. What's your reason for bringing this up? Are you trying to bargain with me using that child's life? Lien shrugged. Yi Lu's life doesn't belong to me. How could I bargain with it? I'm just curious. Lien suddenly smiled slyly. Then you just need to stay with us. The Flame Emperor was speechless. In 10 years, the war between good and evil will erupt. If the Flame Emperor, who mysteriously disappears in the original story, is on our side, we'll have a much better chance. The Flame Emperor's gaze was piercing. He said in a low voice, is that what you wanted to say? Lien shyly touched her head, a bashful smile on her face. Hee hee. The Flame Emperor snorted and flicked his sleeve. If it were that simple, why would I go through all this trouble? The 9 fires purgatory scripture must be cultivated in a place filled with fire chi. And to cultivate it, one's mindset is crucial. Mindset? Lien blinked, her face full of confusion. The Flame Emperor suddenly leaned closer, a glint of gold flashing in his cloudy eyes. Exactly. Have you seen that child's eyes? Even if I force him to cultivate, it's useless. Lien's eyes widened, about to ask further, but the Flame Emperor impatiently snapped. What's there to discuss with a child? Lien retorted bu fu cheat ly. What's wrong with Yi Lu's eyes? They're beautiful. The Flame Emperor glared, fuming. Nonsense. In short, that constitution of his won't do him any good if it's left untreated. If you understand me, go back and persuade him. Lien hurriedly stopped him. I still have questions. Since earlier, I've been wondering. The Flame Emperor's internal energy is no different from when he stole the Kongqing Shiyu. I thought he'd consume it immediately after taking it. Lien tilted her head, pressing, are you planning to give the Kongqing? Sure. You to Yilu? The Flame Emperor rubbed his forehead in exasperation. Why are you, a child, always trying to use your elders? Before he finished, his knuckles snapped forward. A sharp crack echoed in the air. Lian twisted her waist, her skirt swirling out like butterfly wings as she narrowly dodged his fingers. The Flame Emperor's eyes narrowed. Jingfeng, you dodged. Lian stuck out her tongue playfully. Oops, I used my experience. So, subconsciously, Before she could finish, Lian's face was suddenly enveloped in a warm shadow. The Flame Emperor's withered fingers pinched her cheeks, his rough fingertips, squishing her face like soft dough. His cloudy eyes were practically touching her nose. That I sensed it last time. Your eyes are quite something. Lian's face flushed crimson as she protested. What are you doing? Let go of me. You are indeed internally crippled. But somehow, you seem to be able to use internal energy. You weren't planning on hiding it, were you? Someone without internal energy, catching a wooden sword imbued with sword chi barehanded wouldn't just get cut. Though you can't cultivate Jiu Hui Chi Yinju, you're not bad. The Flame Emperor muttered to himself. If Dao saw you cultivate, he might change his mind. Indeed, I can consider this a pastime. The sandalwood door slammed against the wall with a loud bang. Amidst Lian's startled cry, the Flame Emperor kicked open the carved wooden door. His iron-like fingers clamped around the back of Lian's neck, lifting her like a cub. He addressed Bailey Yigong. Your daughter says she wants to learn my Qi Na Shou. The next day, Lian hopped over to her father, clutching a jade bottle and holding it up like a treasure. Father, look at this. Bailey Yigong accepted the celadone bottle. His pupils contracted as he traced the zen-like patterns on its surface. Isn't this Kongqing Shiyu? Didn't the Flame Emperor steal it? Lian beamed, anticipating her father's surprise praise. Instead, his fingers trembled slightly as he gravely asked, How did you get this? Lian shuffled her embroidered shoes. That aren't you surprised? Bailey Yigong held the bottle in his palm, his tone as calm as if he were discussing the weather. Nangong one already told me. He said you gave him the Kongqing Shiyu you found in Master Wan's alchemy room. Her father suddenly crouched down, placing his large hand on her head. Lian grumbled, I wanted to surprise you. Bailey Yigong's thumb brushed against the corner of her eye, a hint of gray hidden in his smile. I was indeed surprised. So, why do you still have a bottle? I heard you only had two. Lian hugged her arms, swaying smugly. Because I'm clever. Bailey Yigong stared at the ethereal blue light swirling within the celadone bottle, then looked up. You lied to them when you said you only had two. Yes. Her father's grip on the bottle tightened, his knuckles turning white. He stared at it in silence for a long moment. Lian, watching his pursed lips, felt a flicker of confusion. Bailey Yigong suddenly ruffled her hair, the warmth of his palm fading to, I need to keep this safe for now. I can't drink it yet. Thank you for your kindness. What's wrong? Father seemed troubled just now. The next moment, Bailey Yigong suddenly scooped her up. I've decided to move. Why? Bailey Yigong explained. It's too crowded if I stay here as well. And after I told Nangong Wan about your special ability, he suggested we move further inside the Nangong estate. It'll be more convenient for your cultivation. Lian was deeply touched. The Nangong family is even more considerate than the Bailey family. I've already found a place. Let's go now. Okay, Lian thought. I think I understand why father prefers wandering the Jianghu to staying with the family. Qi Na Shou is a martial art that uses bare hands to attack or break joints. The Flame Emperor mainly uses palm techniques. Ordinary weapons cannot withstand the heat of Jiu Hui Chi Yinju, so he developed a profound set of fist and palm techniques. Precisely because his fist and palm techniques are so formidable, his grappling skills are also beyond comparison with ordinary martial arts. If I could learn them, it would be an excellent opportunity for me. Father also strongly recommended that I seize this learning opportunity. The morning light revealed frost still clinging to the bluestone of the training grounds. Bailey Lian was once again thrown heavily to the ground by the Flame Emperor of Tianshan's grappling techniques. Her elbows scraped against the broken stones, a burning pain. The Flame Emperor of Tianshan, hands clasped behind his back, said, Let's stop here for today. With that, he snorted, spun around, and departed. Bailey Lian sat slumped on the ground, watching the old man's receding figure, rubbing her aching wrists. She whispered, Thank you. Bailey Lian dragged her weary body back to her room. Yilu was already waiting there. Seeing her enter, Yilu hurried forward with a towel, gently wiping the beads of sweat from her forehead. Bailey Lian complained, her voice full of frustration. I can't figure out if the Flame Emperor of Tianshan wants to teach me or use me as a punching bag. Yilu's eyes were filled with distress. Are you all right? Bailey Lian forced a cheerful tone. Yeah, I'm fine. This feels so cool, much better. Thank you. She then asked, how is your practice of that breathing technique coming along? Yilu nodded that I'm practicing it. The Flame Emperor of Tianshan had taught Yilu a breathing technique that could suppress yang energy. Although it wouldn't completely solve the problems caused by his yang constitution, it was said to be able to slow down the rate of deterioration. Despite these words, his expression remained grave. Yilu still seemed unhappy. Bailey Lian, seeing Yilu's downcast appearance, sighed that I really want to emphasize one last time. This isn't your fault. The grappling techniques are something that strange old man suddenly decided to teach me. It's not an exchange for teaching you the breathing technique. Yilu gave a soft but his downcast eyes still held self-blame and unease. He didn't seem to believe her at all. That day, the sun blazed overhead. A gentle breeze carried yellow sand across the training grounds. Bailey Lian stood on tiptoe, peering at the figures lined up in the distance, her fingers forming a shield above her eyes against the sun. Amidst the clang of armor and weapons, she murmured to herself, today, Father and Nangong Longqing are having a sparring session. Where's Father? If Xiaoling knew there was a sparring session, he would definitely pester me to come and watch. Her thoughts were interrupted when she caught sight of a figure by the weapons rack. Nangong Longqing. Bailey Lian's heart skipped a beat. Why does he look so haggard? Bailey Lian called out a greeting. Long time no see. Nangong Longqing turned his head slowly. His feather-like eyelashes trembled, but he only gave a faint nod. Bailey Lian stepped forward, confusion knitting her brows. Why haven't you come to see me at all this whole time? I've been out of the Sangxiong Pavilion for a while now. Nangong Longqing's gaze swept over Bailey Lian, sharp as an ice-coated dagger. Wasn't the effective period of our agreement until your hand healed? Then why should I go see you? The moment his words landed, Bailey Lian felt a lump form in her throat. She stared at the boy's pale face, finally finding her voice after a long moment. Just to see how I was doing, and to chat. Why did Nangong Longqing's retort feel like a blunt knife, twisting in her heart with every word? This guy is doing it again. Bailey Lian's fingernails dug into her palms. Memories suddenly flooded back. He had been this cold and distant before. Blushing, he had asked, are we close enough now? She had thought that since then, he had stopped keeping everyone at arm's length. A suppressed grunt came from nearby. From the corner of her eye, Bailey Lian saw Nangong Longqing's clenched fists. The veins on his arms bulged beneath his sleeves like a coiled, enraged beast. She sighed inwardly. This son, so indifferent to everything, was truly a worry. For Uncle's sake, I won't hold it against Nangong Longqing. Bailey Lian suppressed her hurt feelings. A smile suddenly bloomed on her face, bright as the first rays of spring sunshine. I think about you sometimes. I want to see you. Don't you miss me? Between the north wind and the sun, Bailey Lian chose to be the sun. Nangong Longqing's eyelashes fluttered violently. His Adam's apple bobbed. He abruptly turned his face away, a suspicious blush creeping up his neck. That I'm busy cultivating, he said, his voice rising involuntarily, startling a few nearby birds. Bailey Lian was puzzled. Strange. It doesn't seem like he's acting like this because of his usual issues. She tilted her head, studying his tense back. Tentatively, she took half a step closer, lowering her voice. Is something bothering you? Whenever Nangong Longqing was troubled, he became very sensitive, and his worries usually revolve around his sword. Nangong Longqing abruptly turned, his eyes swirling with complex emotions. Finally, they hardened into a cold shell that it's none of your business. These words were like needles, piercing the old scars on Bailey Lian's heart. In my past life, as someone crippled in internal energy, I had nothing to talk to him about. Now, reborn, her nails dug into her palms. Yet, it only transformed into a soft admonition that don't push yourself too hard. As she turned away, she heard a very slight gasp from behind her. Liener. Bailey Yigong's voice was filled with warmth. Her father crouched down, arms open wide. Bailey Lian's nose tingled as she ran towards him and threw herself into his embrace, making her father chuckle. She buried her face in her father's shoulder, inhaling the familiar scent of sandalwood. Bailey Yigong's large hand ruffled her hair, the warmth of his palm transmitting through the strands. Are you all right? Looking at her father's worried expression, Bailey Lian thought, if I said I wasn't sad at all, that would definitely be a lie. Bailey Lian sniffed and forced a smile out. Of course, I'm fine. But I've long been accustomed to being treated like this, so I won't get angry about it. On the training grounds, Bailey Yigong stood with his sword at the ready. His banner fluttered powerfully in the wind. Bailey family, Bailey Yigong. Nangong Longqing raised his hand in a fist salute. Nangong family, Nangong Longqing. The young man's figure appeared even thinner than half a month ago. His fingertips trembled slightly as he saluted, as if he were struggling to control his breathing. Bailey Yigong's gaze, sharp as a saw, swept over the accessories at his waist. I heard you can already use sword chi. There shouldn't be any other child who can reach this level at your age. So, I also want to witness it. Draw your sword. Nangong Longqing lowered his eyes, his long lashes casting shadows on his eyelids. He paused before uttering a soft, my comprehension isn't good enough. Since last time, I haven't been able to use sword chi again. What? Bailey Lian gasped softly. Bailey Yigong's eyes narrowed slightly, a thought forming in his mind. My palm is already healed. After all this time, he still hasn't been able to use sword chi again. Yet, his expression remained unchanged as he said, all right, Nangong Longqing. Nangong Longqing bowed respectfully. Please instruct me. Bailey Lian looked at the young man's tense back. So he's this sensitive because of this. Generally speaking, comprehending sword chi is difficult, but once sword chi is used, one wouldn't regress to their previous level. Come to think of it, Nangong Longqing used sword chi a few years earlier than in my past life. Is that why there's a problem? Nangong Longqing's pupils constricted. His sword hummed as it was drawn 3 inches from its sheath. His toes tapped lightly. Amidst the swirling red carpet, a flash of silver appeared a few feet away. The sword's edge sliced through the dust. Bailey Lian gasped in surprise. So fast. Bailey Yigong's black brocade robe billowed without a breeze. With a flick of his wrist, he neutralized the young man's spiritual attack. His movements seemed casual, yet they concealed the subtle force of the swallowing wind technique. Nangong Longqing's sword flashed like lightning, sometimes thrusting straight at the throat, sometimes sweeping across the lower body. Yet each strike was precisely blocked upon reaching his opponent's robes. Bailey Lian watched the swirling sword shadows on the field. As expected, my father is stronger. Nangong Longqing staggered back 3 steps, leaving deep diagonal marks on the red carpet. The young man's hand trembled slightly as he gripped his sword. Cold sweat trickled down his jaw. He secretly regulated his breathing, glancing at his opponent's sword, which always hovered 3 inches away from vital points. He was shocked. All my attacks were blocked. I'll retreat and devise another sword technique. Before the thought could fully form, Nangong Longqing suddenly felt a chill. Bailey Yigong's sword was now poised before him, seemingly out of nowhere. Bailey Lian subconsciously covered her mouth, her eyes filled with amazement. Her father's seemingly casual moves had completely dismantled Nangong Longqing's offensive. Nangong Longqing sheathed his sword and offered a fist salute, his back still ramrod straight. I've learned much. Bailey Yigong's gaze swept over the young man's pale lips, his tone softening. That you've worked hard. I haven't seen a child achieve such accomplishments at your age. You are truly the pride of the Nangong family. Nangong Longqing humbly replied, thank you for the praise. Bailey Yigong was about to speak again when the atmosphere suddenly shifted. The sparring match abruptly ended as the clear sound of footsteps echoed from the long corridor. A white-haired elder stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His imposing presence swept across the red carpet. It was Qing Ling, the head of the Nangong family. Bailey Yigong's expression turned serious. His sword made a clear ringing sound as it returned to its sheath. He then bowed respectfully. Greetings, Patriarch Nangong. Nangong One hurried forward. Father, When did you arrive? You should have said something. The elder's gaze swept across the scene with a sinister glint. His clear voice resonated, causing the bronze bells under the eaves to tremble slightly. I've been here since the beginning of their performance. Before he could finish, Bailey Lien gracefully curtsied as, "Oh, Patriarch Nangong was here all along. I apologize for my rudeness." Patriarch Nangong suddenly turned to Nangong Longqing, his cloudy eyes sharpening. "Longqing, why did you stop just now?" Nangong Longqing hesitated. "I thought continuing the attack was useless, so I planned to devise a new strategy." Patriarch Nangong's gaze swept over Longqing like a blade. "You think you can break the deadlock just by devising a new strategy?" Nangong Longqing swallowed hard. "No." As the air grew tense, the Patriarch suddenly turned to Bailey Lien and changed the subject. "I heard that recently you've started cultivating again." Bailey Lien's heart skipped a beat. Looking up, she met the Patriarch's probing gaze. "Ah, yes." The Patriarch's gaze softened as it fell on Bailey Lien, his tone filled with unconcealed relief. "Your health has greatly improved. That's wonderful. Thank you for your concern." The Patriarch slowly walked forward, his steady steps echoing on the slave floor. Stopping in front of Bailey Lien, he abruptly changed the subject. "How about you two spar?" Bailey Lien's pupils constricted. She unconsciously dug her fingernails into her palms, her voice trembling. "What?" Nangong Wan anxiously took half a step forward, his face filled with panic and resistance. "Father, what are you saying? How can Lien spar with Longqing?" The Patriarch turned, his gaze heavy as he looked at Nangong Wan, a cryptic smile playing on his lips, as long as Lien is willing. "Just consider it a bit of practice. How about a friendly match?" He gestured towards Longqing, his tombrung dri. Of course, Longqing cannot use his internal energy. Nangong Wan's clenched fists trembled slightly, his sleeves wrinkling from the force. His voice was full of anxiety and displeasure. Bailey Lien subconsciously looked at her father, her eyes filled with inquiry and unease. Bailey Gong gave a slight nod, his eyes filled with encouragement and trust. He then turned to look at Longqing. The other man's expression was calm, a chilling aura emanating from him. "I'm no match for Nangong Longqing." But seeing the Patriarch's resolute expression and recalling her father's support, she gritted her teeth. "All right," she said in a clear voice. "I'll give it a try." Father must have his reasons for agreeing. Nangong Longqing's brows furrowed slightly as he cast a questioning glance at the Patriarch. "Grandfather, you really want me to spar with Miss Bailey?" Before he could finish, the Patriarch raised his hand to interrupt him, his tone unusually gentle. "Longqing, I know you've been troubled lately. A few days ago, you told your father you wanted to enter the Sangqiong Academy, right? Then listen to me." The moment Bailey Lien grasped the wooden sword, the rough feel of the hilt awakened buried memories. "I haven't held a wooden sword in so long. After becoming crippled in my past life, I once believed that as long as I worked hard, I could change everything. Looking back, I was so foolish. But now I think I'm fortunate that I tried so hard back then. Even if it was just for show, she knew how to act. She secretly tightened her grip on the wooden sword. Even if it's just for show, I have to keep up appearances." Nangong Longqing's expression was cold, his sword intent sharp. "That I'll say this up front. I won't hold back." Bailey Lien's lips curved into a faint smile. "Show me mercy then." After their brief exchange, the sparring match began. Unexpectedly, Lien seems quite skilled, Nangong Wan commented with interest. Bailey Yigong had just begun to speak when, clang, the wooden sword flew from Bailey Lien's hand, tracing an awkward arc through the air. Nangong Longqing, on the other hand, hadn't even fully executed his move, his sword still poised mid-swing. Bailey Lien froze, her ears burning. And my sword went flying. How embarrassing. He didn't even seem to be trying to knock it away. Nangong Longqing frowned, his face full of confusion. "Don't joke around like that during a spar." "I'm not joking." Bailey Lien wanted to cry. Nangong Longqing's face darkened. "That you're lying. I barely used any force." Bailey Lien sighed helplessly. "Well, it certainly seems that way." Nangong Longqing's temple throbbed. "Didn't you tell Miss Su how to counter my sword techniques? Didn't you say you could see them? Why aren't you answering? Or were those all lies?" Bailey Lien looked down at the swirling dead leaves on the ground and sighed heavily. How could she explain? If you were me, could you answer? Perhaps she was borrowing some of Miracle Dr. Wan's good luck. A bitter taste rose in her throat, and she swallowed her sorrow. So, is this the extent of the Bailey family's strength? Even if you can't use your internal energy, you must have learned some martial arts growing up in the Bailey household. At least basic swordsmanship. Before Nangong Longqing finished speaking, Bailey Lien suddenly looked up. A stubborn glint flashed in her eyes. Young master, not everyone is as lucky as you. What are you saying? Nangong Longqing's eyes were filled with confusion. Bailey Lien's voice was as calm as a still pond. If you think I'm doing this to insult you, then I apologize. Nangong Longqing's grip on his sword hilt tightened, then loosened. Finally, he squeezed out, "Pick up your sword, and fight me seriously again." Bailey Lien stared at the wooden sword, a wry smile forming in her heart. It seemed he hadn't understood her. I don't know what to do. My strength isn't nearly enough to fight him. I can't think of a way to cope. Why did the Nangong Patriarch make us spar? Bailey Lien was about to pick up the wooden sword, but Patriarch Nangong was already standing before her. A profound look resided in his cloudy eyes. Lien, I hear your eyes are quite sharp. You even dodged several of my surprise attacks, didn't you? You're a clever child, so I believe you can figure this out. These words struck her like a hammer blow, awakening her. Bailey Lien gripped the wooden sword. Her golden pupils rippled slightly in the twilight. That's right, I can't defeat Longqing with strength. I have to use my golden eyes. But I can't let the color change too much. I need to see Longqing's sword trajectory first. Nangong Longqing's sword came whistling towards her, carrying a gust of wind. My sword almost flew out again. Bailey Lien narrowly dodged, her toes numb, barely able to keep her balance. But after exchanging blows with him, I can definitely feel it. But in that split second, her pupils suddenly contracted. Is this a benefit of training with the Flame Emperor of Tianshan? I can see his movements more clearly than before. I can't confront Longqing head-on, but I can avoid his sword. Nangong Wan stood on the veranda, watching the flitting figures in the courtyard. He chuckled that it seems Lien is quite good at dodging. Beside him, Bailey Yigong nodded. The Bailey family integrates swordsmanship and footwork, using swift footwork to evade attacks, and then counterattacking with quick and agile swordplay. In the courtyard, Bailey Lien was moving with astonishing speed. I practiced this hundreds of times in my past life. My body still remembers. And Longqing can't use his internal energy right now. Maybe. A light vein throbbed on Nangong Longqing's forehead. His swordsmanship became even more agile. Stop running. I can win. Bailey Lien gritted her teeth and dodged again, but her heart sank when she saw the anger flaring in his eyes. But Longqing is starting to get used to my evasion tactics, and he seems to be losing his temper. I have to make a choice now. Since I can't beat him with swordsmanship, I'll discard my sword. Seeing his attacks becoming increasingly fierce, Bailey Lien abruptly tossed her wooden sword into the air. With my strength, I can't knock his sword away. However, his reaction was lightning fast. With a flick of his wrist, he sent her sword flying. His blade was now pressed against her throat. That I told you. Bailey Lien gasped, feeling the cold steel against her skin. The tremor from the wooden sword leaving her hand still lingered in her fingertips. Nangong Longqing, I'm exhausted. Longqing, why do you call me by my name so casually? Nangong Longqing frowned, a barely perceptible awkwardness in his tone. Bailey Lien glanced up at him, sweat dripping down her forehead and soaking the strands of hair around her face. A swordsman. He paused, his gaze suddenly deepening. Bailey Lien knew that in the original story, Nangong Longqing began to grow because he wanted to protect something real. But right now, his heart was clearly empty, a boat without an anchor. But the problem was for him now. There was nothing real. Steadying herself, Bailey Lien said earnestly, "Find something real for yourself." She looked at him, her voice slightly hoarse from exhaustion, yet remarkably clear. That's how you'll break through your barriers. Nangong Longqing's brow furrowed even deeper, confusion filling his eyes. What do you mean? Before she could answer, a calm voice came from behind them. Bailey Lien turned her head, a lovesick expression on her face. Swordsman Bailey Yigong quickly interjected, "Father." Bailey Yigong turned to Nangong Longqing. "Young Master Nangong, that sparring match was quite impressive." Nangong Longqing bowed respectfully. "You flatter me again. I had intended to continue with the guided practice." Bailey Yigong changed the subject, his gaze lingering on Nangong Longqing's thoughtful face. "But I think we'll stop here for today. What do you say? You seem to have a lot on your mind." Nangong Longqing didn't respond, only looking down at the ground, unconsciously fiddling with the tassel of his sword, lost in thought. Seeing her father engrossed in conversation, Bailey Lian immediately started to whine. "Wah, father, I can't get up." Bailey Yigong smiled and bent down to pick her up, patting her reassuringly. "We train hard." The little girl in his arms immediately nuzzled against his shoulder like a kitten. The weariness in her eyes could no longer be hidden. "Find your true self. That's how you'll break through your barriers." Nangong Longqing walked step by step up the stone stairs, his figure stretched long by the slanting sunlight. Bailey Lian's words were like a pebble tossed into the pond of his mind, the ripples spreading and lingering. He repeated her words softly, his fingers unconsciously tracing the jade pendant at his waist. What does she understand? I only rely on these opportunistic tricks. She even dares to say such things to me. But I lost that sparring match. I didn't expect her to just throw her sword at me. I shouldn't have let her get so close. If I hadn't knocked her sword away, but dodged instead. His thoughts tangled like a messy thread, pulling him deeper and deeper, slowing his steps until he stopped on a half step without realizing it. A shout from the distance pulled him from his thoughts. He had just turned his head when a pair of strong hands grabbed his arm. Nangong Wan's face was etched with worry, his grip tight enough to almost crush his bones. "Nangong Longqing, snap out of it. What are you doing standing on the steps like that? It's dangerous." Nangong Wan's voice rose sharply, his temples throbbing. If you rolled down, it wouldn't just be a broken arm or a leg. Nangong Longqing finally came to his senses, his heart clenching at the sight of his father's flushed face and the worry in his eyes. He quickly straightened up. "I'm sorry, father." A freshly brewed pot of tea sat on the stone table in the pavilion. Nangong Wan pointed to the opposite stool. "Sit down. Let's talk." Nangong Wan took a sip from his porcelain teacup. Nangong Longqing sat down, his back ramrod straight. "What did you call me here for? If there's nothing important, I'll go back." Nangong Wan slammed his teacup down on the table, splashing a few drops of tea onto the surface. "Sit up straight. I called you here because I have something to tell you and something to ask you." Longqing swallowed, remaining silent. Nangong Wan stared at him, his voice suddenly turning serious. "Do you remember what you said to Lian during your sparring match?" Seeing Longqing lost in thought, he pressed on. "Didn't you ask her if that was all the Bailey family was capable of? Putting aside how rude that was, who do you think you are, acting like such a scoundrel?" He paused, his voice softening slightly. "What I want to tell you is, Lian didn't grow up in the Bailey family. She's only been there for a little over a year. So, she hasn't really had much chance to learn their swordsmanship." Nangong Longqing abruptly looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. "What do you mean?" "Bang." Nangong Wan slammed his hand on the stone table, the teacups jumping. "Does the reason matter?" He glared at his son. "If you hadn't been so reckless with your words, this wouldn't have happened. Fortunately, Yigong and Lian aren't going to hold your nonsense against you. Your words could have caused a conflict between our two families." Seeing Longqing lower his head silently, he raised his voice again. "Are you listening to me?" Longqing's fingers trembled slightly, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Bailey Lian has only been training for a year, and she's already this skilled. He suddenly remembered Bailey Lian's breathless words during their sparring match. What had she said? "Not everyone is as lucky as you." I thought I had known her for a long time, but I don't understand that girl at all. She always initiates conversations with me, asks me questions, and even jokes around. I see the real person. Her resounding words echoed in his ears. Longqing's throat bobbed, his heart jolting. "Anyway, you won't be seeing her again anytime soon. Just remember what I've said." Nangong Wan's voice brought him back to reality. Longqing looked up sharply. "What do you mean I won't be seeing her again? Weren't you going to enter the Sangqiong pavilion?" Nangong Wan raised an eyebrow. "Why are you reacting like this? Weren't you constantly clamoring for closed-door cultivation?" Longqing pondered for a moment, then suddenly sighed. "Father, could I have another sparring session with Miss Bailey?" Longqing's voice was unusually firm. "What? Are you serious?" Nangong Wan turned to look at him, his face full of disbelief. "Yes." Nangong Wan was silent for a moment. He turned his face away, his voice dropping a few notches. "Yigong specifically told me to try not to tell you. After your sparring session, Lian collapsed and fell ill upon returning." "What?" Longqing abruptly stood up, the chair scraping against the floor with a harsh screech. The color drained from his face. Bailey Lian's room was silent. Only the chirping of cicadas could be heard from outside the window. She lay in bed, her body heavy and burning beneath the covers. She didn't even have the strength to lift her hand. Yilu, at her bedside, wrung out a towel and gently wiped her sweat-drenched forehead. Ever since the sparring session with Nangong Longqing, she had collapsed onto the bed. Her entire body felt like her bones had been disassembled and reassembled. A burning heat throbbed within the aching. It seems that to use natural qi, one needs a strong body. I need to exercise, she thought hazily, her eyelids heavy as lead. 3 days later, she finally managed to prop herself up against the headboard, only to hear a familiar, mocking voice that you've only just realized this? Your stamina is pathetic. You can't even compare to an ant crawling on the ground. The Flame Emperor of Tianshan's voice carried its usual cynicism. Bailey Lien bristled. Then why didn't you help me improve my stamina? The Flame Emperor scoffed. Oh, you really think increased stamina would change anything? Do you really think your body is fully recovered? In my current condition, it should be all right, shouldn't it? The Flame Emperor didn't reply, only placing the white porcelain teacup in his hand onto the table. In the next second, a cluster of flames flickered to life at his fingertips. The flames danced, licking his knuckles, but didn't touch his sleeves. This is the true fire of the three mysteries, released using internal energy. Only those with high internal energy can wield it. Bailey Lien sat up abruptly. A crack echoed through the room. Spiderweb-like lines spread across the teacup on the table. Tiny porcelain shards tilted upwards, looking as if they would shatter at any moment. Pour me some tea. The Flame Emperor lifted his chin, speaking as casually as if it were an everyday occurrence. Bailey Lien stared at the crack running through the cup, her heart filled with trepidation. The tea would definitely leak out. Yet, she still picked up the teapot and carefully poured the tea into the cracked cup. The moment the boiling water entered, she instinctively held her breath. However, the expected spill didn't happen. The amber tea swayed gently in the cup, suspended along the edges of the crack. It was as if held by an invisible barrier, not a single drop falling. Bailey Lien's eyes widened in astonishment. How? How is this possible? Not a single drop leaked out. Is this the strength of one of the 11 strongest under heaven? This is much like your body. The Flame Emperor tapped the side of the cup with his finger, the cracks shimmering beneath his touch. It looks like it can hold water, can handle things. But those cracks are still there, held together by a single breath. As soon as he finished speaking, he snapped his fingers and lightly touched the cup. Cracked the teacup, shattered into 2 halves. Scalding tea poured out from the broken edges, staining the tabletop a dark color. Drop by drop, it landed on the blue brick floor. Bailey Lien stared at the puddle, feeling as if something had slammed into her heart. He was using this to show her that her current body was like that cracked cup. It seemed capable of handling daily life, but once subjected to external force, those hidden old injuries would completely rupture. This visual demonstration was more impactful than any lecture that Wai Lu, the Flame Emperor, suddenly called out. Please tell Mother to clean up the table. As Lu fetched a cloth and bent down to wipe, his gaze lingered on Bailey Lien's pale face. The shards of the porcelain teacup glinted coldly on the dark table. Bailey Lien lowered her gaze, staring at the sharp fragments, her fingers unconsciously curling. Oh, that's it. That's the state of my body. A flicker of understanding crossed her mind, but her expression remained unchanged. Lien, Yilu's voice came from behind her. She snapped back to attention and forced a smile. You're here. Why are you staring at me like that? Her voice lifted slightly at the end, with a touch of forced cheerfulness. Yilu's gaze didn't linger on her face, but swept over the broken porcelain on the table. His brow furrowed instantly. He turned to the Flame Emperor and asked, Master, what happened to Lien? Bailey Lien's heart sank, afraid that the Flame Emperor would reveal the truth. Just as she was about to interrupt, the Flame Emperor turned to Yilu. He drawled, want to know? Become my disciple, and then I'll tell you. Don't tease me. Bailey Lien quickly crossed her arms defensively. Don't be ridiculous. Using such a childish trick, truly immature. How dare you call me immature? The Flame Emperor of Tianshan's beard bristled at her words. He reached out and grabbed her ear, not gently, with a hint of exasperated frustration. Ow, ow, ow. Bailey Lien's head tilted from the ear pulling. From the corner of her eye, she saw the precarious state of the half-broken teacup, still attached to its handle, teetering on the edge of the table. Careful, she cried. The teacup's about to fall. The Flame Emperor snorted, but loosened his grip. Before Bailey Lien could rub her ear, Yilu stepped forward forward, shielding her with his broad back like a solid barrier. Bailey Lien quickly ducked behind him, only her bright eyes peeking out. She stuck her tongue out at the Flame Emperor. They say laughter brings good fortune. You shut your mouth. The Flame Emperor fumed, his white eyebrows bristling. This is infuriating. I've never met such a cheeky girl. You're always joking with me. Are you truly mad? Aren't you afraid at all? Why aren't you answering? Didn't you just tell her to shut up? Yi Lu muttered, a hint of honest confusion in his voice. Why are you asking her to speak again? You too. The Flame Emperor sputtered, pointing a trembling finger at them. Bailey Lien peeked out from behind Yi Lu, her face no longer showing any fear, but instead a bright smile. What do I have to be afraid of? You were just worried about me, which is why you used that method to warn me, right? Right. The Flame Emperor, his concern exposed, flushed slightly. He turned away, hands clasped behind his back, and headed for the door. I'm leaving. Being with you is driving me crazy. Bailey Lien quickly called after him. Are you leaving so soon? It's almost dinner time. We could eat together. The Flame Emperor paused at the threshold, throwing his sentence over his shoulder without turning back. No need. Before Bailey Lien could reply, he abruptly turned around, his gaze serious. You best not take my words lightly. Using any power comes with a price. Bailey Lien, her playful expression gone, nodded seriously. I understand. Please don't worry. The Flame Emperor's voice deepened, his gaze sweeping over her pale face. No, you don't understand. You're a child who doesn't cherish her own body. You don't know how worried the people around you are. You won't live long. How can you say such a thing? Bailey Lien's face paled. She stepped forward, intending to shield Yi Lu, but he suddenly clenched his fists. His previously gentle eyes flashed gold. He shouted at the Flame Emperor, What do you mean she won't live long? The Flame Emperor ignored Yi Lu, continuing towards the door. He threw back a final sentence. Resume, training tomorrow. This time, we'll add physical conditioning. Be prepared. Silence fell over the room. Yi Lu's fists remained clenched. He turned sharply to Bailey Lien, the gold in his eyes not yet faded. What did he mean? Bailey Lien lowered her lashes, unconsciously fiddling with her sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. Nothing. You just want me to take care of myself. Is that really all? Yi Lu frowned, clearly unconvinced. He stepped closer, his gaze fixed on her. Bailey Lien nodded vigorously, forcing a wider smile. But as her gaze fell on the broken porcelain on the table, her heart sank. Just then, the curtain to the inner room was pulled aside. The cloud-embroidered fabric brushed against the wooden frame, making a soft, rustling sound. Bailey Yigong, dressed in green, stepped in and called Liener. Bailey Lien, as if grasping at a lifeline, turned and rushed into his arms. She deliberately made her voice sweet and clingy, masking her earlier panic. Bailey Yigong quickly knelt to catch her, then asked, Has Senior left? His gaze swept over the mess on the table. What happened to the teacup? The Flame Emperor suddenly broke it, Bailey Lien replied, casually, as if it were an everyday occurrence. Bailey Yigong nodded understandingly, not pressing the matter further. All right, Bailey Lien inwardly sighed in relief. The Flame Emperor is known for his eccentric behavior, so father believed me, without further explanation. Bailey Yigong held out a rolled-up letter. This is for you. Bailey Lien took it, her fingers brushing against the cool paper, a puzzled look on her face. Bailey Lien's mind raced. Who would write me a letter? Is it Shi Jiayu? Her gaze drifted to her father's other empty hand. She suddenly remembered the other letter she had glimpsed earlier, and another question arose in her mind. Then who sent the other letter father was holding? Lost in thought, her fingers touched the seal of the envelope. Just as she was about to open it, noticing the insignia, it seemed to be from the Bailey family. Lian Bailey Yigang Zuden die Spoke. Her hand paused. She quickly looked up. Bailey Yigong slowly said, You mentioned that kid at the water tank gate. What was his name again? Bailey Lien immediately replied, Su Xiaoling. Right, that's him. Bailey Yigong nodded. Before he could finish, a rush of hurried footsteps suddenly came from outside, approaching rapidly with a whirlwind momentum. With a bang, the door was abruptly pushed open. Su Xiaoling poked her head in, a thin layer of sweat on her forehead, and boisterously exclaimed, The road to Liar's place is so far. Why did you move here? Bailey Yigong and Bailey Lien turned their heads simultaneously. Bailey Yigong looked at the girl at the door, whose face clearly read, I'm tired, but I'm excited. He smiled at Bailey Lien that I heard her coming from a long way off. Is this the Miss Su you mentioned? Bailey Lien nodded. Yes, that's right. She turned to the still panting Su Xiaoling. come and say hello. This is my father. You've always been curious about my father. Now that you've seen him in person, what do you think? Su Xiaoling snapped back to attention, a blush creeping up her cheeks. Her hands unconsciously flew to her face, fingertips radiating heat. Her eyes flickered towards Bailey Gong, her voice soft as a whisper, yet filled with undisguised infatuation that he's so handsome. Before finishing her sentence, she lowered her head and giggled at the air. The whirlwind energy from before completely dissipated, replaced by utter infatuation. Even her ears were flushed red. Bailey Lian, seeing her like this, nodded with mock seriousness. Yeah, I think so too. Su Xiaoling finally snapped out of her daze, the blush on her face still lingering, but her tone a bit more subdued. Since your father is here, does that mean you're going back to the Bailey family estate? Bailey Lian softly confirmed, I suppose so. As soon as she finished speaking, Su Xiaoling's eyes reddened, tears welling up. Bailey Lian quickly comforted her. I'm not leaving immediately, so you don't have to worry. Su Xiaoling sniffled, the tears ultimately not falling. However, her eyes remained red-rimmed, filled with reluctance as she looked at Bailey Lian. Then when are you leaving? After the weather gets warmer. But Su Xiaoling hesitita. Bailey Lian looked at her questioningly. What is it? Winter will last a long time. I'll still be here for quite a while. Su Xiaoling became anxious, her brows furrowing. Then when we going out to play? Bailey Lian was taken aback, blinking in confusion. What do you mean? You forgot. Su Xiaoling suddenly shot up from her chair, slapping her hands on the table, her voice rising an octave. Didn't we agree to go out and play? How could you forget about it? Bailey Lian was startled by her sudden outburst, instinctively pressing her hand to her forehead, her mind racing. Seeing her stunned silence, Su Xiaoling stamped her foot anxiously, her voice full of grievance. I even asked for extra allowance to go out and play. Bailey Lian was shocked. Truly a filial daughter, she thought. Su Xiaoling had asked for allowance at her own mother's birthday banquet. Composing herself, Bailey Lian said to Su Xiaoling, I'll go ask my father now. The next day, Bailey Lian and Yi Lu waited at the entrance of their residence. She silently rejoiced. Luckily, father readily agreed to let me go out. Huizhou, where the Nangong family estate is located, is very safe. There's no need to worry about safety at all. Most importantly, father seems pleased that I've made a friend. I couldn't leave Yi Lu behind, so he came along too. As they waited, Su Xiaoling came running from afar, shouting as she ran. Running up to them, she grabbed Bailey Lian's hand, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I heard you sparred with young Master Nangong and won. I wish I could have seen it. Seeing that annoying guy lose would have been so satisfying. Unable to bear Su Xiaoling's chattering, Bailey Lian interrupted. Wait a minute. Who told you that? I lost. Su Xiaoling froze, her face full of surprise. Huh? I heard you won. Bailey Lian repeated firmly. No, I lost. As they spoke, Yi Lu suddenly stepped forward, coming between them. He looked at Bailey Lian and said, you did win. Your body has only recently recovered, hasn't it? Bailey Lian raised an eyebrow in confusion. So what? Yi Lu said calmly. I heard he's been practicing the sword since he was a child at Panshan Academy. But you've only been learning for a few months, and you were able to surpass him. That's humiliating for him. If it were me, I wouldn't consider myself the winner. Bailey Lian frowned, murmuring, it's not exactly humiliating. As the three of them talked, a chilling air suddenly drifted from behind them. Bailey Lian's back stiffened, a cold sweat inexplicably beating on her forehead. I have a strange sense of déjà vu. He subconsciously tightened his grip on his sleeve. From the corner of his eye, he saw Yi Lu frowning at him, his eyes full of confusion. What's wrong? Su Xiaoling also noticed his strangeness and touched his arm. As soon as she finished speaking, a cold voice suddenly rang out from behind them, like ice pellets hitting stone. That's right, I said if we were talking about victory or defeat, Miss Bailey didn't knock my sword away. So you could say I won. Yi Lu jolted, and Su Xiaoling turned around at the same time. They saw Nangong Longqing standing there, his dark robes making his face appear even paler. His gaze fell directly on them. But if we're talking about the purpose of the practice, he paused. I feel like I lost. His gaze shifted to Bailey Lian, and it actually held a trace of sincerity. But I don't feel that it's a disgrace. I just think Miss Bailey is very skilled. After saying this, he abruptly turned his head to look at Yi Lu, his eyes suddenly sharp like a drawn sword. You said he only learned swordsmanship for a few months. Is that true? It seems you don't know your master's true strength. The air around Yi Lu instantly grew heavy, his eyes cold as ice. sandwiched between them. Bailey Lien felt as if sparks were flying between the two, and she inwardly groaned. Why are they so antagonistic towards each other? Su Xiaoling suddenly craned her neck and shouted, glaring at Nangong Longqing with a look of Bu-fu cheek. Yi Lu isn't scaring anyone. A gust of cold wind, carrying fallen leaves, swept past, a few strands of hair sticking to Bailey Lien's face. She raised her hand to her forehead, closing her eyes in exasperation. Thank you for being so clueless, Xiaoling. Saying this, she quickly tugged on Yi Lu's sleeve, pulling him to the side. Turning to Nangong Longqing, she tried to make her tone sound natural. Young Master Nangong, why are you here? Nangong Longqing's gaze shifted from Yi Lu to Bailey Lien's face. The sharpness in his eyes softened slightly. Did you want me to ask my father to come out? I just came to take a look. I heard your body has recovered. Bailey Lien looked at his calm expression, but her heart skipped a beat. What's wrong with him now? Bailey Lien looked at Nangong Longqing with some surprise. Didn't the Nangong family head agree to let you enter the Sanqiong Academy? I thought you would go immediately, but you came to see me instead. Nangong Longqing abruptly turned his face away, his ears seeming to flush slightly. His voice, however, was stiff. Didn't you tell me that pay more attention to other people? Bailey Lien quickly shook her head. But I didn't mean me. As soon as she finished speaking, she saw Nangong Longqing suddenly turn back, his brows furrowed, his eyes carrying a hint of anger. Then who should I pay attention to? Bailey Lien was stumped by his question. Suddenly, inspiration struck. Right? Isn't the female lead right here? Her eyes curved into a smile, and she pointed towards Su Xiaoling, grinning mischievously. How about Miss Su? Huh? What? Su Xiaoling was completely bewildered. She panicked and glared at Bailey Lien, mouthing silently. Why are you doing this to me? Bailey Lien, feeling guilty under her gaze, quickly shook her head, and oh, not that. Then, feeling that wasn't right either, she changed her words. Why Yi Lu doesn't seem quite suitable. How about someone closer to you? Nangong Longqing's fist clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His voice deepened. That you've been saying strange things since just now. The one who won against me was you, wasn't it? Besides you, who else am I supposed to pay attention to? Isn't there also my father? My father. Bailey Lien hurriedly searched for an excuse. Before she could finish, her sleeve was gently tugged. She turned to see Yi Lu looking at her, a hint of urgency in his eyes. When are we leaving? Bailey Lien, as if grasping at a lifeline, immediately turned to Nangong Longqing, her tone brightening. It's rare for you to come find me, but unfortunately, I already have plans. If you'd like, I'll come find you next time. So we'll be going now. Nangong Longqing's brows furrowed instantly. He pressed, Are you going out? We're going out to have fun. Bailey Lien smiled brightly. Going out to have fun? Nangong Longqing's expression suddenly changed, as if he'd heard something unbelievable. His tone was stiff. Bailey Lien thought to herself. His reaction is a bit over the top, as if he's hearing the word fun for the first time. Just as she was thinking this, Su Xiaoling suddenly spoke, her voice hesitant. Do you want to come with us? Xiaoling. Bailey Lien nearly jumped. Su Xiaoling quickly turned her head, covering her mouth with her hand, and whispered in Bailey Lien's ear, I just remembered, my mother said young Master Nangong has already apologized to me, so she wants me to reconcile with him and get along well. Bailey Lien's mind raced. The Shui Xiang sect leader's original goal was for Su Xiaoling to get close to the Nangong family's heir. I was just thinking going out would be troublesome. This works out perfectly. Her mind was made up. He immediately broke into a brilliant smile. So, how about you two go out? He said cheerfully that it would be better if you went out alone. Before he could finish, his arm was suddenly pinched hard. The pain made him gasp. Turning, he saw Su Xiaoling glaring at him. Her cheeks flushed, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and urgency. She clearly hadn't held back. Bailey Lien quickly pleaded, I know. I'll go with you, all right. Nangong Longqing, however, raised an eyebrow, his expression aloof. I never said I was going. A cold wind rustled the falling leaves. Yi Lu suddenly reached out and pushed Bailey Lien's back, a hint of impatience in his voice. Don't waste time. Bailey Lien stumbled forward from the push, a strange feeling of unease rising in her chest. Not taking him, she thought, as if hearing Yi Lu's inner voice. I have a bad feeling about this, she thought, glancing at Nangong Longqing. As expected, his face darkened, his dark eyes flashing like sparks. His grip on his white, embroidered sleeve tightened. Through gritted teeth, he said, "I've changed my mind. I'm going to." The anger in his voice was almost palpable. Bailey Lien looked at his tense jaw and then at Yi Lu, who wore an "I knew it" expression beside her. She suddenly felt that this outing wouldn't be peaceful. The streets were bustling with noise. The cries of vendors, laughter, and the sound of cartwheels rolling over the stone pavement all blended together. It wove together into a vibrant tapestry of sound. Bailey Lien gazed at the passing crowds, her eyes full of wonder. This is Huizhou, where the Nangong family lives, she thought. Everyone seems so happy. Yet, for some reason, people kept glancing their way. She subtly assessed her three companions. Yi Lu, cold and aloof like a solitary pine. Nangong Longqing, radiating an aura of nobility. Even Su Xiaoling possessed a refined and elegant air. It was clear they all came from wealthy families. She turned to Nangong Longqing. "Do you have any recommendation for places to go?" Nangong Longqing seemed taken aback, his brow furrowing slightly. "Recommendations? Aren't you a local?" "This is my first time here." "I don't know either," Nangong Longqing said frankly, "but this is where you live." Bailey Lien's voice rose slightly. Nangong Longqing looked at her wide eyes, puzzled. "This is my first time on the streets too." "First time?" Bailey Lien almost choked on her own saliva. "You've never been out here before?" He nodded, his tone as casual as if he were discussing the weather. That's so surprising." "Of course." Bailey Lien gestured emphatically. "Isn't this near your home? You should pay attention to what's happening here, what kind of place it is. You'll be leading the Nangong family in the future, won't you? There are some things you can only understand by seeing them firsthand." As she spoke, she felt a light poke on her sleeve. Turning, she saw Yi Lu tilting his chin toward the street vendor. Following his gaze, she saw strings of candied hawthorns, glistening red and tempting in the sunlight. Bailey Lien's eyes lit up, and her feet involuntarily started moving towards the stall. "I want to eat that." "No!" Su Xiaoling suddenly shouted. Bailey Lien stopped abruptly and turned to look at her. Su Xiaoling held her chin high, her expression determined. "We're going to eat steamed buns." "Steamed buns?" The other three echoed in unison. Su Xiaoling puffed out her chest, a smug look on her face. "If you come here, there's one place whose steamed buns you absolutely have to try. Unlike young Master Nangong, I've been to the city several times with my senior brother and sister." Looking at the sparkle in Su Xiaoling's eyes, Bailey Lien's craving for candied hawthorns faded considerably. She couldn't help but smile. That's wonderful. "As expected of you, Xiaoling. You're the best. So, where are we going?" Bailey Lien followed Su Xiaoling's pointing finger and stopped in her tracks. A small, unassuming shop on the corner was surrounded by several layers of people. The queue snaked like a long dragon, stretching from the front of the shop all the way to the alley's entrance. Laughter and chatter filled the air, and even the white steam rising from the steaming baskets seemed to carry a festive warmth. Bailey Lien blinked, slightly incredulous. "Are all those people waiting in line?" Su Xiaoling nodded vigorously, her eyes shining. This shop is very popular, so there's always a long queue. But since we're here, we definitely have to try their steamed buns." Looking at the seemingly endless line, Bailey Lien felt a surge of excitement. If it's a good restaurant, there's bound to be a long queue. Beside her, Nangong Longqing frowned at the long line, his tone full of disdain. Is it really necessary to wait in such a long line just for steamed buns? "They're just steamed buns." Bailey Lien turned to him and smiled. Patting his arm, she said, "Longqing, you need to be more open-minded." She deliberately slowed her speech, her voice light and teasing. "Only by experiencing delicious food can one become open-minded. Your world is so narrow because you haven't tasted good food." He paused, then added, "You can also call me by my name." "I don't want to." Nangong Longqing thought. That inexplicable irritability surged up again. "Gates, why do I feel like I've lost? It's really annoying." His expression told me he was thinking this. Bailey Lien, from the corner of her eye, saw his tight jawline and secretly laughed. Just then, Su Xiaoling suddenly slapped her forehead with an "ah" and exclaimed, "Oh right, my senior sister asked me to buy her essential oils." Bailey Lien was stunned. "Essential oils? Then let's buy them after we eat the buns." "No way." Su Xiaoling shook her head like a rattle drum. "That kind of essential oil spoils quickly, and they only sell it every 5 days. If we go after eating, it'll be too late." While Bailey Lien hesitated, Su Xiaoling was already pulling her towards the edge of the line. Let's go. You two wait here. Bailey Lian stopped abruptly. Wait a minute. You want to leave Yi Lu and Long Qing here? Yeah. Su Xiaoling blinked innocently at what's wrong. Bailey Lian felt a knot in her stomach and her lips twitched. Is that even a question? She quickly added, that's not very good. Let's all go together and then come back. Su Xiaoling immediately let go of her hand and looked at the long queue with distress. You mean get back in line again? That's not possible. No way. Then one person can hold our place in line, and the other 3 can go by the essential oils. Quick, hurry. Do we really have to do this? Bailey Lian hesitated, her gaze passing over the 3 of them. Just as she was about to say, then Yi Lu and I will go, she met Nangong Longqing's gaze. His eyes seemed to hold sparks, clearly saying, you dare. Startled, she swallowed the rest of her sentence. She quickly changed her tune. Then Longqing and I will go. Her wrist was suddenly grabbed by Yi Lu. Bailey Lian looked down and met his eyes. His eyelashes were lowered, and his eyes were moist, like a little abandoned puppy, looking at her with a wronged expression. He didn't say a word, but it made it impossible for her to harden her heart. Bailey Lian was completely at a loss. Sighing, she said, then I'll stay in line, and the 3 of you go. No. 3 voices rang out simultaneously, making the people in line next to them look over. Meanwhile, at the Nangong estate, a young servant carefully walked in and bowed to Nangong Wan and Xiao Foran, who was beside him. Lord Nangong, Madam Xiao, the young master said he wants to go out with Miss Bailey and Miss Su. He sent me to seek your permission. Nangong Wan abruptly raised his head and straightened up, his face full of bewildered surprise. He quickly walked to the servant, his voice rising several pitches. What did you say? Longqing wants to go out? Is this true? Yes, the young master said he wants to go out. The servant lowered his head, not daring to meet his eyes. Nangong Wan froze, his brow furrowing. After a moment, he turned to his wife, his voice still filled with incredulous urgency. Did that boy take the wrong medicine? What do you think, my dear? Should we call the doctor? This is the first time Longqing has ever Dudong said he wants to go out, isn't it?